Before we begin, in the spirit of reconciliation and respect, the InkGuild acknowledges that we live, work, and play on the traditional Treaty 7 territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, as well as the Stoney Nakoda and Tsuut'ina nations. This territory is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. Finally, we acknowledge all Indigenous and non-Indigenous to honor and celebrate this territory alongside us.
Here, let me serenade everybody with bass.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Welcome back to the InkGuild podcast. Just go to fucking therapy. And you know what? I'm not going to say anything bad. I want to work with you publishers.
Don't correct me. I don't care.
Get an email.
Species. It's brilliant.
Look how stupid his fucking hair looks.
I would say spoiler alert, but like, don't read her books.
It was adorable.
It's very cringy. So cringe. Disgusting.
Aggressive support, yeah!
Thank you for the psychic damage. He's a furry that goes out at night and beats people up. Like, you're telling me he's competing with the flying Jesus metaphor?
I brought you to this podcast, I can take you out. I'm signing out of the cowboy episode, good night.
Powerful piece.
So, did you get a degradation kink since we last talked? Because they're being real mean to you.
You got almost all of those wrong.
And
Oh, I forgot what I was.
You get distracted by Gabe.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the InkGuild podcast. I'm hearing myself. Echo, is that you?
Good.
Is there still an echo? No, it seems to be gone now. Okay. Anyway, I'm tonight's host, Alex, and I'm joined by Gabe.
Hello.
Marie-Soleil.
Hi there.
And Tyler.
Hi.
And we're talking about Percy Jackson.
Woo!
This is going to be a fun episode. I just finished my reread of these books literally like 4 hours ago. I've reread them so many times. My books are in such bad condition. But this is probably one of my favorite book series of all time. Yeah.
I definitely liked them back in the day, but I can't say I've done any rereads personally. I think when they came out, I was just a little bit too old to like really grasp them as my type, but I know all of it through osmosis at this point.
I loved Percy Jackson as a kid, and I was like super into it. And then I saw the movie was coming out, and I was like, oh yeah, movie for this book that I like, and I love it, and I read it a bunch of times, and I love it. I can't wait to see this movie. And then I saw the trailer, and I was like, why did they give away that he's Poseidon's son in the trailer? That's it. What's going on there? And then I saw the movie, and I felt like I was being stabbed with several sharp objects through the whole movie. It was a bad time, and I didn't like it. And it kind of. Oh, is there something wrong with my audio?
No, you're good. I'm just wondering if you're from like an alternate universe or something. I don't remember there being any movies.
Anyways, the books. I really liked the books. And there were no movies, and nothing happened. There were just books. There were 4 of them, and I read 2 of them, and I started the 3rd one, and I didn't finish it. And there was nothing outside of the books sort of caused me to lose interest in the series. There was no outside interference happening there. It just randomly happened for no reason.
There's 5 books, not 4.
Wait, wrong alternate universe. Shit. Because I think I've only definitely physically read 2.
I've read 2 of them.
Marie-Soleil.
I read the books. I enjoyed the books. I think I only made a full, I only read all of them once, but I know I've reread, the first one multiple times because I'm pretty sure in the first book in, grade 8, I wanted to do one of those poems where you just, pull words out of the book, and it was going to, compare the entrance to Hades to the entrance of Olympus. And so my copy has all of that passages underlined. And it's the only book that I've ever written in that I still own.
Damn.
How could you deface a book like this?
I've reread them probably close to 10 times at this point, no joke. When I first started getting into them, it was right after The Last Olympian came out. And then when he started releasing the next series, the Heroes of Olympus series, I used to do a reread every summer before the next book would come out. So that I was all caught up. So I'd reread them so many times in high school.
Nice.
Yeah. Kind
That's
of fell off that wagon. Yeah. Kind of fell off that wagon when the Trials of Apollo books started coming out, which I have all of those, but I still haven't finished them, so we're not going to talk about them. But yes, Percy Jackson. Let's start with the first book in the series, The Lightning Thief. I believe we've all read this one. Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a classic. In this book, we're introduced to our hero, Percy. We're introduced to 2 of his friends, Annabeth and Grover. And we're introduced to kind of the concept of the world. We meet a few of the gods. We meet a few of the monsters. So, yeah, let's talk about the first book.
So, again, when I read it, I was probably a bit older.
How old were you?
I'm trying to think. When did Lightning Thief even come out? What was the publish?
Let me see.
2005-ish? 2005. My copy, anyway.
Release date, June 28th, 2005.
Okay, 'cause I don't think I read it until 2014, 2010. And I was just leaving my teen fiction phase and getting into dark fantasy. So, I still enjoyed it, but it was at the tail end of my teen fiction reading. But the Greek mythology aspect got me really good. And this is going to sound like absolute blasphemy, I could not get the Harry Potter parallels out of my head at all. It was a problem for me. A serious one.
The thing is, I see where you're coming from. It just hurts because Percy Jackson is so much better than Harry Potter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, it's become a bit of an archetype, and I'll forgive Percy Jackson every time for the whole hero wakes up, turns out they're a hero, goes to school, meets 2 best friends, has a love interest, and does all the good things, chosen one style. It's a good archetype for teen fiction, and I do think that Rick Riordan did it well. I also like the myths covered in the first book, because he only touches on a couple of the main bodies of myth and monsters before the other series where he goes into a few more. And I think it was a really good primer into the world. You can tell he did quite a bit of his research going in, unlike a lot of Greek fanfiction.
Percy Jackson is Greek fanfiction.
Yeah, she said the line. She was looking right at me when she said it.
She was waiting for the opportunity.
Yeah,
yes.
She was.
I've said it before, and I will say it again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's fun. I remember these books being kind of big around before I got into them. And I think I was at summer camp, and we used to get bedtime stories before we went to bed each night. And this year there was this one summer where my cabin counselor brought The Lightning Thief and read the first few chapters for us over the course of the week. And like I had no interest in these books before that, but then like, you know, listening to the first bits of the book, I don't remember how far we got into it. I think we only got to like camp before, you know, the week ended. But like I went home and I was immediately like, I need these books. So like the next book fair I went and I got the first 3 in like a set, brought them home, read them all super quickly. And this was like my first real introduction to Greek mythology as well. I think I was in like grade 3 or 4. And yeah, I was obsessed.
See, it's funny, like, my first introduction to Greek mythology would have probably been Disney's Hercules, but I don't necessarily count that. Like, literally, right before I picked up the first Percy Jackson book, I finished an Greek Myths and Gods encyclopedia written by some stuffy-ass Harvard professor that I found buried in my school library. And I was like, damn, this is really good stuff. I wonder if there's any more stuff like this. So I went straight from, like, actual historical depictions of the Greek myths into Percy Jackson. So I was, like, pretty well-versed. It was a very strange vibe shift all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's very fair. Percy Jackson myths are very sanitized, which is it's fair considering the age range that they're written for. It's just kind of funny.
I mean, about like in the actual Percy Jackson books, they are very sanitized. But then, I'm going to say his name wrong at least some point in this podcast. But Rylden, yes, I know Tyler.
Just call him Rick.
Rick. Wrote out like a book of the Greek heroes and one about the Greek gods narrated from Percy's point of view, where he actually mentions the fact that like there are multiple versions of these myths and this is the most common version, yada yada yada. Which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Like slightly personal headcanon, all the myths that we hear in the Percy Jackson are the myths that these, 12 and 13-year-olds are being told by everybody else. Everybody else knows what the real myth is. It's like, we're not going to tell our kids this yet. They can learn that when they're older.
Yeah. I mean, even the monsters participate because they seem to be in on the sanitized versions too.
Well, when the gods are looking down on you, it's like, don't tell our kids the shit we've done in our past. I would listen.
That is fair. That is fair. But let's talk. Do we want to start with the myths covered in the first book then? Because what do we got? We got the Minotaur. We have Medusa. We have Aphrodite cheating on Hephaestus with Ares.
Yeah.
Classic stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff.
Well, Charon is a character.
Yeah, I think let's start with the Medusa one. What does Percy use to look at the Medusa again?
It's a shiny ball. If I remember correctly, it's like a lawn ornament, one of those like pretty shiny balls that like you hang from something.
Because she's basically in a garden section of a Home Depot, right?
She's at Mrs. Auntie M's Home Emporium. Garden Gnome Emporium?
Garden Gnome Emporium, yeah.
Thank you. She's selling statues of people.
I'm literally just looking for that part of the book. Hold on. That's after it.
I remember like Annabeth trying to do rapid math calculations because of the shape of the sphere is going to distort like reality of such, so Medusa's not going to be exactly where she looks like she is in the sphere. And Percy's like, hurry up! We don't have time for this!
Yeah, it just says the gazing ball.
Stop trying to include math in my teen fiction. I don't want to learn
Annabeth's an
physics
architect.
fraction.
I don't know what you want.
Architect at 12? Anyways. I just find, like, depictions or redoings of the Medusa myth very interesting because, obviously the initial is a mirrored shield. supposedly. And given the time period of the Bronze Age, getting a mirrored shield would be like, truthfully a magic item, right? Like having a shield that's so perfect and flawless it reflects whatever is seen in it. That's mystical. Nowadays, oh boy, even I've got a pocket mirror.
Yeah. Which, I mean, they did do that in the movie that doesn't exist.
The alternate timeline.
Yeah, the movie from the alternate timeline. They did. I'm pretty sure they did use a phone in the movie.
Yeah.
Or an iPod.
It has other problems because
They did, but they didn't use like the screen of it. He used like the reflective back of the iPod.
Oh, you're right. He did. That was. Oh my god. He also shouldn't have had an iPod.
Whew.
Anyway, we're not talking about the movie.
It doesn't exist.
It
Stop
doesn't
dipping
exist.
into alternate timelines.
Yeah. That's okay. I'm the god of the multiverse. I have seen into other timelines.
They are true.
InkGuild.
They speak the truth.
InkGuild lore.
In guild lore. But yeah, no, Medusa's a fun one. It also, I feel like it's one that makes a lot of sense for Percy Jackson, considering he's named after the hero that originally killed Medusa. Which I actually think is it's very interesting. On my reread, I noticed like a lot. Like I'm pretty sure Rick Riordan has said that like his original idea for Percy Jackson was like a retelling of like the Hercules myth and like Hercules like trials.
The 12 trials, yeah.
Modern, the 12 labors, whatever they're called, in a modern time. But he does draw on more than that. Like obviously the Minotaur is from Theseus, which Theseus was a son of Poseidon originally, right? I'm not wrong there.
Perseus is a son of Zeus.
No.
And Theseus is a son of Poseidon. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And I think in the books, Percy says his mother named him Perseus because that is one of the only like Greek heroes that has a happy ending.
Yeah.
I remember
And
that.
she wanted her son to have a happy ending, so she was like channeling it.
Which is very cute. But I just think it's interesting because, you have him doing the same, like killing the same monster that Perseus is well known for killing. And then you also have him killing the same monster that Theseus, who is like one of, I think the only notable son of Poseidon demigod I can think of off the top of my head anyway, from the original myths. So you have that tie-in. And then, the Theseus stuff comes back again and again because the Labyrinth and the Minotaur end up being so important in later books. And then, of course, you have all the like labors of Hercules kind of scattered throughout. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So I think like those three tend to be like the most notable heroes that are drawn in relation to Percy himself.
Yeah.
I always find talking about Theseus's myth very interesting because, like, IRL Greek mythology, Theseus was an absolute fucking dick. But anyways.
I mean, that also is mentioned in the Percy Jackson books, but, like, in one of the later books.
Anyways. Myths. Did we get Hydra in the first book?
No.
We didn't get Hydra in the first book, right?
Not in the first.
I'm misremembering. Okay.
That's in Sea of Monsters.
Hydra was in the first movie, though.
I was about to say, am I like I remember the movie there in the Smithsonian, or just a normal museum. I don't know.
It's in Nashville. Like a monument in Nashville.
Yeah.
I'm remembering how much of a goddamn road trip the first book was now.
That's in the movie. I mean, the first book. They're all very road trip, honestly.
Yeah. Most quest stories are road trip stories.
Like,
I think the first book and the third book are the most like road trippy, in that you're just like, oh look, we're at a national monument. But like,
let's destroy it.
Other than The Last Olympian, these books have a lot of traveling in them.
Yeah.
Which is like something that definitely sets it apart from, again, my earlier analogy of the Harry Potters, because Harry Potter's very, very little travel until
the last
yeah, until the last one when suddenly road trip fucking central.
Yeah.
But no, that is something I definitely enjoyed. Personally, I would have probably liked a bit more Camp Half-Blood, just because I want to see the demigods learning all the things and doing the stuff that was part of the youthful power fantasy, right?
Yeah, but I also feel like having them traveling so much really works because, you know, okay, thanks, Gabe.
Yep. Thanks.
Oh, does that come through?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
For those at home, it's root beer.
It's root beer, right, Gabe? Root beer?
It's not root beer, but it's not beer either.
Okay. But yeah, I think them traveling actually works really well because you get to see them like, you know, having to, like, they have the constant struggle of having to figure out how to get where they're trying to go by themselves, which, you know, when you're like a 12-year-old kid traveling from one side of the country to the other, not easy.
Especially when you're wanted.
Yeah.
By the law. Not like wanted by like your family wants you to come home safe. Percy was a wanted criminal during the first book.
Yeah.
And some of
he
the
can
other
fucking
ones.
drive.
Yeah.
Weren't they also carrying around literal weapons?
Yeah, but like the
And
myth.
like Medusa's head. That's in the book, right? They just have that with them.
They didn't carry around Medusa's head.
No, they... In the book, after they kill Medusa, they put her head in a package and send it to Mount Olympus.
Yep.
That's fucking dark.
That's mafia level shit.
What is Annabeth says like something about like the gods will think we're being impudent,
Impudent, yeah.
And Percy says, "Well, I am."
Yeah. He's such a fun character. Let's talk about Percy, actually. What do we think of Percy as a protagonist and as like a character? I think he's one of the few protagonists I've read in like what age range is this? This is not young adult, it's lower than that. But like it's one of the few like protagonists in like this age range that I've really liked. And like I like genuinely root for him. A lot. I think he's very fun. I think he's like sassy, but we also like he's not like I feel like we really get to see him figure things out as the story goes along. Like sometimes one thing I noticed a lot on my read through is like how much little pieces of information are sprinkled throughout the stories, and you can see Percy and like the other characters slowly like piecing everything together as they go. So I think he's like a good protagonist in that like he's able to figure those things out, and it doesn't feel like I feel like sometimes when writers try to do this, they do it in such a way that the audience, the readers are like, okay, it's obviously this. How have you not figured that out yet? Are you stupid? I feel like Rick has hit a good balance with these books where you don't feel that. Like, so even if you know the answer or you figure it out before Percy does, you still understand why he hasn't figured it out yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
I agree.
It was definitely something I noticed. I love a clever character, and this is going to be like some pretty mighty praise, but I always found like reading Percy was a bit like reading Kvothe from the Kingkiller Chronicles. Just a bit. Because he was a good level of clever for any situation that he was put into. He's got a bit of a flaw with his impudence and sassiness. Like, he feels really good to read. And yeah, because each book kind of does have a little bit of a twist to it, if I remember correctly. Just like a teeny one here and there. And I found myself not usually catching them, which was good. Like, I knew Percy wouldn't get it on the first try sort of deal in The Lightning Thief. That was kind of laid out pretty obviously. But it still comes well in the pacing, I find.
Yeah. Well, it's like even knowing who like the Lightning Thief is in the first book, having reread it so many times, it's still like, you know, when I go to look for it, I can see like all the little pieces pointing in that direction, but it's still like, but I still understand why Percy doesn't see it yet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good build-up.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I've learned recently about writing mystery and stuff like that. If your audience can pick out the mystery, that's great. Like, you've done your job in the foreshadowing. And I think if we're talking like general story structure alongside Percy here, I think Rick does that quite well. It's never like, oh, our character suddenly knows what's the answer and they're going to drag it out for another chapter to suspend the audience and the character, how could they possibly know this one bit of fucking information that the audience would never be able to guess just for a rug pull. But at the same time, it's not like Percy's a wandering fucking brick, so...
Yeah.
This reminds me...
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you were saying something?
No, go ahead.
This reminds me of part in the book. It's like in the first book, I think they tell Percy that like the usual orientation film isn't going to work in this case, so he never sees it. And I think that's because like it would be kind of boring for us to read the orientation film from Percy's point of view of him watching this movie. It might have been, I think it could have been done really well. It could have been very funny. But I think it's funnier the fact that he doesn't watch it, and then there's a couple references to things that he would know if he had watched it, but he doesn't know it.
Yeah.
And like in a later book, we have another character that actually watched the film talking about something in it.
Nico, right?
Yeah,
like he
Nico.
watches it and comes out and he's like, oh, that was so cool. And he just like rambles about it. And Percy's just like, I have no idea what this kid's talking about.
Yeah.
Another thing on... He's vanished.
Gabe.
Gabe. We summoned him again. Good. One thing I did like about Percy is, as a POV character, as the sort of, you know, fish out of water entering the realm of the gods for the first time so that we get to enter it with him, I thought he was very good for that. He didn't sit too long and mope about the changing of his life. He didn't sit too long and go, ooh, ah, look at this, ooh,
Yeah.
ah, right? Like, it was solid pacing of, all right, we're bored of this already. We get it, you're the chosen one, blah, 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 super special. Can we move to the plot, please? But, yeah, I didn't think it was too long in the tooth for mopiness or awestruck exposition.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like Percy also as a character kind of has a good balance of like both of those things. Where like, you know, like obviously he's upset about like certain, I mean like, you know, his mom being attacked by the Minotaur and then disappearing and he presumes she's dead, you know, not super pleased about that. I'm not super pleased about finding out about that. His, like the reason why his dad has never been around is because he's a god and not because he like got lost at sea, you know? So he's got like all this stuff where he's like, has good reason to be upset. And then he's also got all these good reasons to be like, in awe, and in some cases he is in awe and you see him be like, wow, that's really cool, but he has like a good balance of both of those things and also just like general, I guess this is my life now, so I'm not going to focus too much on it. Like he balances like all of those different traits of entering this new world really well.
Yeah, I thought so. I definitely thought so.
But yeah.
Can I bring up something from the movie that doesn't exist?
Yes.
Something that really annoyed me in the first movie that doesn't exist, at the very end of it, like Poseidon tells Percy that the reason why the gods can't interact with their kids is because he was there for Percy when Percy was a baby and it was making him too mortal or something. So that is why the rule was put in that the gods couldn't be around their kids, which is not at all what it's like in the books.
I have no memory of that.
I'm going to Google it just to make sure that I'm not pulling this out of my butt.
That's so stupid.
Yeah, I don't remember this either.
I never watched
I don't remember it because I didn't watch these because they didn't happen. But
Because they don't exist. Right, yeah.
Sorry, I am different timeline Jersey Paxson. So
yeah, you're Jersey Paxson. You get different privileges.
Yeah,
here.
we're Jersey Paxson and the Olympians. over here.
I'm just like, I can't get over it because Jersey is like a ship name for two of the characters in the series.
Oh, good.
Percy.
So you just put like a Jason Percy shipper. I'm sorry.
Good. Good.
Jam and Percy.
Jam?
I don't know. I don't know any. I don't know. Maybe there's a guy named Jam they're shipping him with. Who knows? It could happen.
No, I was referring to Jason, but
maybe it's in one of the movies that don't exist.
There's a character named Jam in the fake Percy Jackson movies.
I mean, we do have Grover.
What?
We do have Grover, which is the one name I was never.
What does that mean? Oh.
Grover's like a real name, though.
I know, but it's kind of British, so.
But you know, he's not British. He's
sorry. Alternate reality. We nuked Britain. Anyways. Other characters, because we've talked at length about Dear Percy at this point.
Annabeth. Let's talk about Annabeth. And then we can get to Grover. I love Annabeth. This is just going to happen there's like no book characters in these books that I dislike. But no, I think Annabeth is a great like counterbalance to Percy. Like I think they work really well as like a duo, where she's kind of got like the more like, I was gonna say laid back, but she's not laid back, so that's not true. But more like the more like tactical side of things, whereas Percy's more likely to be like brash and rush into battle. Annabeth is more likely to like sit back and be like, no, we need to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like her being like the smart character, because that is like her character archetype is like the smart one. I think like works really well, just like to have like her foundation of knowledge to you know help Percy learn things that he doesn't, like to like fill in his missing knowledge gaps, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I think she's great. I love one of the things I really love about these books is how the characters are all very flawed, and they're like allowed to be flawed and also like good characters. And I think Annabeth's flaws really make sense for her and like build her into like a really good, full, well-rounded character.
I can only compare Annabeth against, you know, her obvious other smart archetypes, so I'm not going to do that. I just want to say I'm really glad that Annabeth is like daughter of Athena, right?
Yes.
And not like a daughter of Aphrodite doing that whole very typical love interest thing that could have been so easily done, and I would have hated it.
Don't read the second series.
I don't plan to.
So I found it on Percy Jackson Films Wikipedia page. Poseidon loved his newborn son, but he began neglecting his duties as the sea god. Poseidon was forced to leave them behind. Zeus feared others would follow like his brother and had the other gods forbidden from contacting their mortal children.
Like, I get that they probably just wanted to make Poseidon not as bad of a person as he is, but like, come on, the gods being flawed is a really important plot point.
And could you imagine, like, you're in the movies that don't exist, Percy is 16, not 12, but could you imagine your father telling you at 16, yeah, the reason I wasn't around you in your life was because I was doing a shit job at my actual job, and that is why none of my siblings have been around your cousins.
Yeah. Stupid. Anyway, back to Annabeth. Let's talk about better things.
Annabeth is lovely.
She's great. I also really, really like how the romance is done in the first series. I just like, I feel like, I mean, it helps that it starts when like the characters are 12, so like they're not really in a position to be in a romantic relationship. And then it like has the opportunity to build over 4 years and 5 books. But I just like, you know, it's like when they finally get together, it's like, it feels like, yes, we've been waiting for this. It doesn't, and like, I mean, it's very slow burn, obviously, because it doesn't happen till like the end of the 5th book. But it's just like, it feels really like well earned. Like it doesn't, I'm so used to reading romances and YA books where the characters like meet each other and then like a week later they're so in love that they die for each other kind of thing, right? And it's so tiresome. So I just really love to see like a really well built, like very real feeling romance where like, you know, they're friends first and they care about each other and then it develops into love, like a romantic love from there.
Yeah, I do remember like, so obviously we could look at other YAs who are like, yeah, we are smitten first time, eyes lock. Cassandra Clare, I'm looking at you, you fucking weirdo. But yeah, these characters are 12. When I was reading it, even at the age that I was like, yeah, I'm glad it's clearly hinted at. This is obviously what's going to happen, but I don't need to read about that. I'm reading about them fighting Greek monsters. That's what I fucking care about. And so yeah, I think the slow burn was definitely good there. Boy, though, do I find 3-man parties awkward. 'Cause, oh boy, you poor third wheel, Grover.
But like,
Doesn't seem to mind.
Grover is also like a lot older than them technically. In the books, he's already like almost an adult, even though he appears 12 and is like going to school with 12-year-olds.
Yeah, satyrs age very weirdly in this world. I don't know if that's like canon to Greek mythology or not. I don't know if any of the Greek myths talk about the way that satyrs age.
They do not. The Greek myths were not particularly concerned with that. They were like, weird goat people sing song, drink wine, ha ha ha.
Want sex.
Want sex.
Yeah. Another part that was half left out of the books. It was very heavily implied, but a 12-year-old probably would not pick up on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Grover's an interesting character too. He's probably my least favorite of the trio, but I still like root for him and stuff, you know?
Yeah, I always find that problem with 3-man parties. Like I said, one always ends up as the comic relief sort of, oh, loyal best friend, gotta sacrifice himself at one point for the main character, because that's like my job, that's my whole archetype, everybody, and it always falls flat with me. It even fell flat with me back when I read these, personally.
Does he sacrifice himself for Percy at some point?
I was just listing the archetype stereotypes. I don't remember if he actually did.
In the movie that doesn't exist, technically.
Oh. We're not talking about the movie because that was stupid and out of character for everyone.
So stupid.
But yes, loyal best friend sidekick. I always fucking hate that. It's like you could remove them from the story and the story would not change.
I don't know if that's true in Grover's case, though. Especially if we look at, like, the second book.
That is, yeah, I see where you're coming from, Alex. Grover does have some important parts.
Like, I feel like he's also a good balance to Percy. And it's funny that you keep saying Grover's like the loyal best friend. Not that he's not the loyal best friend, but in my head, Percy is the one who is the loyal best friend who would like sacrifice himself for Grover.
His fatal flaw is loyalty.
I mean, loyalty is literally Percy's fatal flaw. So like, I'm not pulling that out of nowhere.
It's okay, because Marie-Soleil just whispered that at me too, so it's really strange that I heard it twice.
Listen. But yeah, no, Grover, I think Grover also balances the party well. He definitely does fall into the comedic relief a little bit. But I also feel like the books in general, like pretty much all of the characters fall into comedic relief at some point because that's just like the style that the books are written in. But yeah, no, I don't know. These books do go very hard with the 3-man party thing because that plays into the whole idea of like threes in Greek mythology, right? Like the 3 fates and the 3 furies and all that.
Yeah.
And so 3 is like the number that people go on in quests. Of course,
yeah.
that ends up being thrown out the window almost immediately, but like, you know, it's the thought that counts.
Rule of 3 is the best rule that ever was, even if we subvert it.
The 3 fight.
The what?
Gabe?
Gabe? I think your mic cut out again.
So,
Yep.
hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, we hear you.
Did my question come through at all?
Nope.
No.
I was just asking, like, the three fates are in like in the books. They're in like a flying car or something, right?
They're in a
No,
taxi.
that's the three Grey sisters.
Which
They're
are often
different
confused for the three fates.
The three fates are also in the books, but they're in a different part of. Three fates are in the first book and the last book. The Grey sisters are in the second book. I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Other characters.
Someone's.
Huh?
Never mind. You go on.
Other characters in Camp Half-Blood, though. Let's talk about our school bully antagonist friend. I thought Clarice was very well done.
Clarice is great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about this with one of my friends while I was reading these books. And obviously I'm just gonna talk about like her arc kind of through all the books because I don't think I can do her justice without doing that. But I think her arc is really, really interesting because in the first book, she's basically just school bully. She sucks. She's mean to Percy constantly. And like since we're seeing her through Percy's eyes, Percy doesn't like her, so we don't really like her either. Second book, we kind of like she gets chosen to go on the quest for the Golden Fleece. We find out that no one wanted to accompany on her quest. So again, rule of three broken right there. And Percy and Annabeth and Tyson end up like helping her on her quest and then sending her home where she's like celebrated for it. But like you kind of get to see through Percy's eyes that kind of gets under her skin. I don't have it with me, but like in one of the side short stories, which takes place, I think,
Marie-Soleil's eyes literally just lit up, so go on.
Like in the, what's it called? The Chariot?
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. I don't remember the name of it.
I think it's called The Golden Chariot. It's one of the like short stories. I think it takes place between Sea of Monsters and Titan's Curse.
Yeah.
And Percy runs into Clarice like in the winter, like off camp days, and helps her with a quest. This is where Phobos and Deimos come up.
Yep.
Where they bully her basically, and you find out that she's actually kind of scared of her dad, and like she has like a lot of pressure on her as like a daughter of Ares, and who's like probably one of his more powerful daughters, and like she feels like all this pressure on her, and you see that side of her. And then kind of like through the last three books, Titan's Curse, Battle of the Labyrinth, and like The Last Olympian, you start to see like very different sides of her. Titan's Curse, not so much because she's not really in that book, but in Battle of the Labyrinth, you start to see like her interest in Chris Rodriguez, who ends up going mad in the Labyrinth. And like, you know, this like care she has for him, and she has this like really soft side where she's like allows herself to be vulnerable with him. You see that in her like friendship with Sarlina. And then like, yeah, you start to see different sides of her, and Percy starts to see her as like a more full, well-rounded person and someone that he actually like respects instead of just like a school bully, and like starts to understand where those parts of her come from.
Yeah.
It's great. Love that.
Mm-hmm. Like in that short story you're talking about, like the quest she's going on isn't like a camp quest. It's like the children of Ares get to drive his chariot, but she is the first daughter that gets to do this. So her godly brothers decided to steal it from her because they were like, no, this can't happen.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, because I read it literally like a couple of days ago, it said specifically like she's the first daughter to do it in a while, but it's also very heavily implied that not many daughters get this opportunity to like prove themselves to their father.
Yeah.
Like, on a broader whole, I do like Clarice. I'm going to make another comparison to Name of the Wind and the Kingkiller Chronicles, because we've got the school bully antagonist archetype in that as well. What's his name? See, I don't even remember his name, but I remember Clarice, because He is just an asshole in that series. All he is. He's an antagonist. We do not see any redeeming points. It is just him and the main character going at it for 2 books. Clarice does it so much better. And for what is truthfully a minor character, a minor antagonist, to have that much thought and development is fantastic writing. And more to a broad scope, again, of the whole series, Rick Riordan tackles family drama in a very interesting and palatable way. That's what a lot of this series is truthfully family dramas laid out with Greek myths and bigger scale stakes in some cases. But I think it really makes it good because if you're a kid going through some of that stuff, you've now got a sort of media art escape, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, as someone who was raised by a single parent, like, I found myself very, like, drawn into these books because, like, you know, most of the kids in these books are raised by a single parent, or they have, like, you know, a step parent, or they, like, don't get along with their parents and, like, that kind of stuff. So I feel like that kind of stuff, having that laid out so, like, explicitly in these books makes them very relatable for kids who might not have seen that anywhere else.
Thought that was, like,
so, like,
really big
Percy's relationship with his mother was, like, very relatable to my relationship with my mother, you know? So it's like being able to see myself in, like, the little things like that.
Yeah.
But on the note of antagonists, I want to talk about Luke. Because, like...
Oh, you mean the guy who fights on top of the water tower and skyscraper, right?
No, that doesn't happen.
I'm going
that is an alternate universe.
Sorry, that was my Jersey coming through.
But, like, okay, so Clarice, again, minor antagonist, has a lot of thought put into her. And, like, I think Percy being able to see the different sides of her and start to see her as a person is really important because that's kind of, like, the same thing that happens with Luke, who is the main antagonist of the books. I mean, technically it's Kronos, but, like, Kronos is a plot device. He's barely a character.
Yeah.
Which works for these books. I think I was talking with a friend of mine and I compared him to Ozai in, like, the Avatar series.
Yeah, that's not a bad comparison.
Or, you
like,
know, Voldemort.
Stop bringing
Voldemort actually shows up and tries to do stuff.
Later, yeah.
He shows up in most of them in some way, shape, or form. Anyway.
Or, like, you know,
not the topic of this discussion.
Yeah, Kronos and Ozai are both, like, you know, they're the overarching villain. There's something to defeat, but they're not, like, the focus of the story. And I think Luke... I don't know if I would compare Luke to, like, Zuko specifically, but, like, the thing about Luke is, like, you know, a big part of the plot of The Last Olympian is Percy basically figuring out why Luke is the way he is and why he's taken the actions that he has and trying to, like, understand him as a person. And so I think, like, it's no accident that Clarice is also given that treatment because I think it kind of, like, lays the groundwork for Percy to start, like, doing that with Luke as well. Because Luke is a great antagonist. I think, like, he's set up really well, you know, as this kind of older guy that Percy looks up to, Annabeth looks up to, everyone looks up to him. He's great. And then he betrays them. And then, like, over the course of, like, the next 3 books, they're just trying to, like, figure out what he's doing, why he's done it, debating whether they should hope that he can change or not. And then the last book is just spent trying to figure out, you know, his family history, what happened to his mother, what drew him to Kronos, how was Kronos able to, like, manipulate him into doing what he wanted, and how can we save him? He's such a good character. Because it's like you also, it's not even just that Percy understands Luke, but Percy, like, understands Luke. He understands where he's coming from. There are times when he thinks maybe Luke's right, you know? And, like, in the end, he comes to his own conclusions, and, you know, Luke is redeemed and dies a hero. But, like, you still, like, you understand where he's coming from, and it's not just a matter of Kronos is wrong and the gods are right, Percy realizes that there's a problem on both sides and seeks a solution that can solve all those problems so that someone like Luke doesn't happen again.
God, I want
I
to
just
mention the
spoiled
Water Tower
the whole
fight.
series. Sorry.
Stop it.
Might I
What?
say, like, going back to first book, that betrayal was done super well. The moment of
Right?
tension, like back at camp by the river and stuff like that, if I'm remembering it correctly, where everything's already happened, and then this is just like a sudden nail in the coffin. I really enjoyed that betrayal. Still one of like top betrayals. And you mentioned the archetype in passing, that sort of group mentor figure, the golden boy that falls sort of figure. I love that one, and I thought it was done super well. Group mentor betrayals are always like a nice soft spot for me, and I did think Luke's was very good.
Yeah.
Again,
Any other thoughts?
I don't
Gabe,
know how he
Marie-Soleil?
ends. I didn't read that far. Continue.
Oh God, you're gonna hate the literal only thing I can remember about Luke. It's been so long since I read these books. I don't even remember which god he's related to.
Hermes.
That's right.
Which also, actually, I think is a very interesting choice for an antagonist. I feel like a lot of people, if they were to approach this idea and be like, oh, who should the antagonist be the son of? I don't know, Ares or Hades, probably.
Yeah, throw
But
me
no.
those devil advocates in here. Yeah, let's go.
But no, Rick went for Hermes, the god of like messengers and I guess thieves. But like you know, thievery is considered kind of like a minor crime in the grand scheme of things. Like,
Although that
you
is
don't have
like
a-
foreshadowing of the first book at least.
Yeah, like it works for the first book for sure, but it's just very interesting to have, you know, the son of the messenger god be the like main antagonist of your series instead of the expected character who would be like Nico, you know?
Especially when like Hades and Ares in this first book are so prominent as like antagonistic characters.
Yeah. Yeah. Just think, yeah, it's very, very interesting choice, and I like it. It's unexpected, but it works.
Yeah.
While we're still like kind of on first book stuff, I guess this is more general world building. The gods and their representations. I both like and dislike the whole mortal form, divine form god trope. The whole, you can't see me in my true form, you'll literally die. And I'm sitting here like, sure. I guess this seems unnecessary in world building for me. Also, the fact that Poseidon was an old fisherman was kind of campy, but anyways.
I mean, the books are pretty campy.
They're
sometimes,
pretty
you know.
campy.
They're written for like 12-year-olds.
Yeah, and I was edgy when I was 12, so.
I mean, I read these when I was like 8 or 9, but
I was edgy then too, damn it. The edge never left. The edge has been here since the beginning.
yeah, it's also just funny because when you think about like some of the interactions the gods had with mortals and like they're in the OG Greek myths, like didn't Zeus literally visit someone as like a rain shower once?
A golden...
Yeah, so there's a golden beam of light.
A golden
No, shut up,
shower?
don't make that joke.
Shush.
He came to Theseus's mother as Perseus's mother as a beam of light.
Another point, he was a swan.
He was a swan. Yep.
Then he had abducted someone as an eagle once as well.
Yep. Zeus is the OG furry, everybody.
I knew it.
Zeus has a bunch of fursuits stored somewhere on Mount Olympus. Why do you think he cheats on Hera? She hates that shit. Anyways. Yeah, the whole, like, mortal form of the gods thing, just, I don't know. I don't see the necessariness of it.
Necessity?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I get it, we have to have a sort of distinction between these gods as characters and still powerful players in the setting. But hey, I don't know. I just always rubbed me a strange way reading it.
Interesting. I've never had an issue with it. I think it functions. I don't know. I do kind of like the like whenever a new god is introduced and Percy doesn't quite know who they are yet, like the descriptions of them are always very interesting. It's always the eyes that like give them away. Like I think when Artemis is introduced, she has like golden eyes, and like Ares are like fiery, and Hestia's are like also fiery but more in like a warm way.
Yeah, don't Ares like melt his sunglasses?
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure that's a description that's used. Like, Percy is being his sassy self when they're sitting in the diner in the first book, and, like, his glasses start to melt or something.
It's possible. I don't remember it. But yeah, I think that's very fun. Like, I love when, like, gods or, like, magical beings have weird eyes. I think that's super fun. Just a very fun trope. Trying to think who else is important that we need to talk about from the first book. I guess we can talk about Chiron and Mr. D.
It's something interesting that they do in the first series more so than the second series with the names, like Mr. D. You don't call him his name, you call him Mr. D. You don't call any of them their names. Because names have power and all that.
I feel like that gets forgotten so often in the books, though.
Oh, so often. And mostly by Percy, but it makes sense with Percy because he doesn't know any better.
In the first book.
Yeah.
But it's like in the Titan's Curse when he runs into... No, in the Battle of the Labyrinth, at the beginning of the Battle of the Labyrinth, when he runs into Rachel again, and she's just like, oh, and these things, and starts like listing them off, and he's like, you shouldn't say those names around me. But then later he'll be like talking to someone and be like, oh, and Kronos is doing this, and Zeus is doing this. And it's just like, Percy, do you not remember what you were telling Rachel earlier?
Casual name dropping, it's fine.
Of like your main antagonist, Kronos. You really want to mention Kronos when it could like catch his attention?
Do you mean he who shall not be named? Yeah.
No, we're not using that.
It's okay. Marie-Soleil also just flipped me off. Really feeling it. This is good. Dionysus as a camp counselor, eh? Well,
it's a choice.
It's an idea.
He's grounded.
I guess. Like, so...
Only drink Coca-Cola. Well, Diet Coca-Cola.
So, like, interesting stuff. Tyler's going to put on his IRL Greek mythology hat here. Dionysus is a super fucking interesting god in the Mediterranean. So, like, we all think of him as happy party god, but the truth is he's probably the oldest of the Olympians in mythology-wise, because there are, like, myths and stuff that date back so far that they precede the common tellings of the pantheon. So far, in fact, that they might not have even originated in Greece. Like, they may have originated with winemaking way back in the day.
Yeah, I remember, this is very interesting, because I did take a class about, like Greek history and stuff, in one of my last terms at university. And, like, one of the things that my professor talked about was, like, Dionysus and, like, the pantheon was raised, like, outside of Greece. Mm-hmm. Like, grew up in, like India area, basically. And then she also talked about, like, one of the things that's really interesting about the Greek gods in the pantheon is the way that, like, they're very contradictory sometimes, like how Zeus is, like, the god of oaths and can't keep his marriage together because he can't keep it in his pants. But then when she was talking about Dionysus, she mentioned that, like, even though he's the god that's associated with, like, you know, having orgies in the woods, once he, like, marries someone in the Greek myths, he never, like, has an affair. Again, my actual Greek mythology expertise is questionable. I just thought that was very interesting because then in the books you learn that the reason that Dionysus is at the camp is because he like was chasing an off-limits nymph, and this is like Zeus's punishment for him doing that. So yeah, I don't know, it's just very interesting.
Zeus calling a nymph off limits? Huh?
Zeus wanted the nymph.
Yeah, for himself, presumably.
That's never stopped any of the pantheon. Hold on. But anyways, Dionysus kick. Yeah, there's also stories of him driving people fucking insane way back in early myths, which is very interesting, which is something we normally associate with Pan nowadays. So there are some correlations that believe Pan and Dionysus may have been a single god way back before written history truthfully took off. But yeah,
I mean,
very interesting.
They have a lot in common. Like they're both associated with satyrs and stuff too, right? So I wouldn't be surprised.
Yep. One
but that does actually, the madness stuff does actually come up in the books. In the Battle of the Labyrinth, he like cures someone of madness, and he's like, "Oh, madness is my specialty."
I think also in one of the books in the Percy Jackson series, I know it happens in the second series, but Percy like calls on him and he drives somebody mad or something to aid Percy on his quest or something.
Oh God, which book is it? I think it's in The Titan's Curse. This also contributes to my Luke thing, in that like in the first couple of books, Percy hates Dionysus, which fair. But then like in The Titan's Curse, he gets to see like other sides of him and starts to like actually care about him a bit more. But yeah, I think it's in The Titan's Curse where like a bunch of them get cornered and he's like, "Hey, Mr. D, help." And he's like, "Say please." And so he does. And then he, like drives a bunch of people insane. It's great. Great scene. Mm-hmm. Love Mr. D.
Mr. D is pretty cool.
Underworld representation within the first book.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't remember it very much. I don't think it was very memorable.
You don't remember the DOA recording studio?
Like, vaguely. This is ringing a very dusty old bell somewhere in my brain pan.
I just love that the entrance to the Underworld is in a recording studio named the DOA, Dead on Arrival Recording Studio.
It's good. I watched the Percy Jackson or the Lightning Thief musical adaptation like a few months ago, and they had Charon in it, portrayed by I think the same woman that played Percy's mom, but she like, as they like get in the elevator to go down to the Underworld, she's like, "Oh, do you want to hear my hit single that I'm trying to put out?" And just like breaks into song. It's so funny.
Nice.
Musicals.
I love musicals. I think they're fantastic. But yes, Hades is an interesting character. Like, I don't think Rick falls into the trap of like, oh, he's the god of the underworld, so he's basically the devil. Mm-hmm. I think he manages to like balance Hades pretty well in that he's kind of a dick, but like you kind of get where he's coming from. But mostly he just has like his own interests at heart, and he's trying to pursue those more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very much so.
Mm.
All I remember is the actor in the movie. God, why am I like this?
I think Hades is a really interesting character because, like, the Greeks, like, everybody puts him as a villain, but the Greeks never thought of Hades as a villain because everybody died. So, of course, you needed a Lord of the Dead. That's just how life worked. But Hades was never, like, the death. That's Thanatos.
Yeah.
Hades was just the king of the dead.
Yeah, he just rules over the underworld, which is one of the three, like, major realms that needed a ruler.
Yeah, he's mainly just a bureaucrat, if we're entirely honest. Also, smoking hot rich in the myths.
Yeah. That definitely follows through. I think because also there's like the conflation of Plutus, is that his name? The Roman god?
Yeah, Pluto or Plutus is the Roman equivalent to Hades.
No, but the thing is, I'm pretty sure Pluto and Plutus were originally two different gods that ended up being conflated. With Pluto being like the lord of the underworld and Plutus being like the god of riches. But because they're so similar, they ended up being conflated. I read that somewhere. If I'm wrong, don't at me.
Don't at me. That's some energy right there.
I read that, so I think it's very interesting. That's something that comes up a lot more in the Heroes of Olympus books with Hazel.
Yes.
But like it's still very interesting, like the way, like I remember like the way Persephone's garden is described. Particularly, I think we see more of it in the Sword of Hades, which is another one of those like mini stories that takes place between books. But it's like described as having like a lot of like jewels and stuff covering it, as well as like all the underworld flowers. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think Hades is well balanced. I actually like think the underworld is very interesting because we actually see a fair amount of it in the books.
I just love the fact that they get past Cerberus with a red squeaky ball.
He just wants to play fetch.
He just wants to play with somebody. He's just a puppy.
And then you see that again in like the 5th book when they bring Mrs. O'Leary into the underworld and she wants to play with Cerberus and Cerberus wants to play with her.
Yep.
He's just a big puppy.
Of all the like modernization elements in Percy Jackson, like, yeah, there are some that are pretty good. Greek myths don't hold up when you throw modern sensibilities at them, least of all how we treat animals nowadays. How we treat the literal son of Typhon. So he's an intelligent creature, everybody, by the way. Cerberus is in his own right kind of a god. So yeah.
He is a puppy.
He's a puppy.
Good puppers. Good divine puppers.
I literally saw a Tumblr post the other day that was like someone made like a to-do list and it was just like the 12 labors of Hercules and someone replied like content warning animal abuse.
Oh my god. Yup.
And I'm like, you know what? Yeah.
Holy shit. Yep. There's like a bunch. That's basically a hunting list at that point.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. First book stuff. I don't think there's anything more I want to go over in the first book. I think we hit all the points.
Do we want to talk about Poseidon at all? We didn't even talk about Chiron. Hold on.
We also didn't talk about Smelly Gabe, or Sally. Sorry, Gabe.
Sorry, Gabe.
Not you. You don't spell.
Not this again. I thought I was free of this. No.
I mean, I guess whether or not you smell depends on what you're drinking right now.
Root beer.
It's not root beer.
But yeah, I guess Sally and Smelly Gabe are kind of important
Smelly
characters.
Gabe.
It's not you, Gabe. That's why we're saying Smelly Gabe specifically, because it's not you. But yes, Sally, good mom award.
Best mom award.
She did her best.
Yeah. She married a man so stinky that it kept the monsters away from Percy for 12 years. Percy, the son of Poseidon. Annabeth, the daughter of Athena, had monsters coming after her when she was 7.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Sally deserves good things. I guess she gets those through Paul eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she's great. I love her relationship with Percy. Just like the way that he like always like goes to her when he has like a problem and knows that she can help him even just by listening. It's very sweet.
I understand where the world comes from with the stepdad. But again, even when I was reading these kind of young, that world building seemed real loose to me.
That's fair. I think, yeah. I don't know. Smelly Gabe is an interesting character.
He gets what he deserves.
He does get what he deserves. That's the one thing the movie actually got right. The movie from the alternate dimension.
I mean, the movie does it differently.
The movie does do it differently.
I like the way the books did it.
The books are better. But, like, I still think, like, the post-credits scene where he, like, opens the fridge to see the head is so funny.
So, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, in the books, Percy gets Medusa's head back, and he gives it to his mom. And then she chooses to use it to turn Gabe into a garden statue.
And sells it for a lot of money.
So that she can put herself into college.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, like, the good thing about the way the book does it is that it's, like, less of a Percy is saving his mother and more of a she's saving herself kind of situation.
Which is kind of like a reflection of the original Perseus story, except in Perseus's story, he uses it to turn the evil king and all of the evil king's cronies into stone.
You know, now that you've made that analogy, I did not realize that was the analogy being made, and I'm much more okay with it.
I don't even know what you're talking about, I'll be honest. I don't remember that part.
Myth. Yeah, we're talking about original Perseus myth.
In the original Perseus myth, after he cuts off Medusa's head and he flies on Pegasus back to his mother, the king of that area, I can't remember what the king's name is trying to marry his mother. She doesn't want to marry him, but he is forcing her to do this. Percy shows up and is like, hey, Mom, cover your eyes, and pulls out Medusa's head, turning this evil king and all of the other people, of these evil nobles who made fun of him and his mother and everything, into stone.
Huh, I don't think I've ever heard that part before.
Yeah, that's why he's got the bestest myth in Greek mythology.
Yeah.
He goes and saves his mom at the very end, goes and grabs Andromeda off the place where she's tied with a, because her father was an asshole, to get eaten by a giant sea serpent, and lives happily ever after with his mama and his wife.
His mom, I think, marries a nice fisherman.
Yep. Percy myth ends kind of well.
Mm-hmm.
I understand now.
Now that you've mentioned that analogy, I am much more okay with the stepfather angle now. It makes a lot more sense, mythological. Good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good parallel. I didn't know about that parallel, but I like that. But yeah, I do like that Sally gets to, like, choose to save herself. Like, Percy gives her the means, but she makes that decision herself. I feel like that's stuff that gets taken away from some of the characters in Heroes of Olympus.
Mm-hmm.
Calypso. But, like, we're not talking about those right now. Yes. We still haven't talked about Chiron. Do we want to talk about Chiron, or are we just going to be like, he's there?
Chiron's cool.
He's there. He's a centaur.
Mm-hmm. He teaches.
He's a teacher.
I feel like he should have realized that Percy was Poseidon's son a lot sooner.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
So, in the very first chapter of it, while Percy is with his school, that Charon is disguised as a Greek teacher.
Yeah.
There's a scene where they're standing by a fountain, and Percy uses the water to soak one of these bullies. Basically, the water reaches out of the fountain and grabs her and pulls her into the water.
That is true. That does happen.
And then, when they're at the camp, and Clarissa is trying to shove his head in a toilet, Percy again takes control of the water and flushes them all out of the bathroom, and he is the only one that is dry.
Part of me, I kind of always assumed that, Chiron either didn't see those things, or, like, he knew, or had suspicions, but didn't want to say anything until it was confirmed.
I guess. Because, like, I'm pretty sure, like, people at camp were talking about that. It's part of why, like, Clarice was so pissed at Percy, and the Ares cabin was. I mean, he did make a fool out of their dad at the end of it, but, like...
But they hated him from the beginning, and that was definitely part of why.
Mm-hmm. And Grover definitely saw it and probably mentioned it.
Kid controls water. Must be nothing. Might be a Hermes kid. Who fucking knows, right?
Yeah, I feel like they live in like a world where assumptions can be dangerous though too, you know?
I guess.
And also he's not supposed to exist because of the pact, so
Child is illegal. Yeah.
He is.
I mean, there's also like, if we want to delve into this even a little bit further, there are other Greek gods of seas and oceans that if they had a demigod could totally, control water. Poseidon's just the big boy of the three, so, like, it could have been Thalassa. It could have been... Oh, why am I failing now? It was the precursor to Neptune that ended up getting melded with Poseidon when the Romans take over. Fuck. Anyways.
Oceanus, dude.
Oceanus, yes, thank you. So, yeah, like, there were others.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that... fairly covers the Lightning Thief, unless anyone has anything else they want to add.
I had, like, one thought about Percy's powers and abilities now that I was talking about them. Throughout when he's first at camp, he does mention going to the stables. None of the horses talk to him. None of the Pegasi talk to him. But then, the moment he's on his quest, he talks to a zebra. And suddenly, in all of the other books, he can talk to horses. Because Poseidon created horses.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
It's a weird power creep because, like, at the very beginning, until Poseidon claimed him, he couldn't talk to any of these creatures. And I understand it was Rick's one of his ways of, like, hiding the fact that Percy's the son of Poseidon.
I mean, maybe the horses didn't realize they could talk to him yet.
Maybe.
I don't know. I actually don't mind the way Percy's powers kind of develop over the books.
Mm-hmm. Most of them develop, like, slowly, but just the talking to horses.
Yeah, that one is kind of silly.
Yeah, I love me some good waterbenders. Hi, Katara. How you doing?
Yeah. It's fun. I love the part in, like, The Last Olympian where everyone's like, Percy, how are you doing that? And he's like, what are you talking about? And then he looks down and realizes he summoned, like, a little hurricane.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh. That part's very funny. But let's move on. Sea of Monsters, Book 2. In this book, we're introduced to Tyson, who is Percy's Cyclops half-brother. We get to see more of Clarice. At the very end of the book, we're also introduced to Talia, the daughter of Zeus.
Who is not a tree, as I was informed of, but is inside a tree.
Other way around.
Shit. I was like, I've got it for sure this time. She
was turned into a tree as she was dying.
She was turned into a tree.
By her father.
Mm-hmm.
A different guy was put into a tree.
Yes, in the last book.
All right.
Or, well, a tree is, like, grown around him, specifically. We'll get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sea of Monsters has lots of... I mean, it's about the Golden Fleece, so we've got parallels to Jason and the Argonauts, I believe.
Oh, Jesus. What a fucking tragic myth that one is, though. Holy shit.
I'm actually, like, this is, like, one of the few that I'm not familiar with at all. I don't know anything about how it actually goes.
Everything bad happens to Jason all the damn time. Like...
Classic Greek. So, like, what happens?
No, when you think classic Greek, it's usually Jason getting shafted in some way, shape, or form. He gets married, like, 2 times, abandons one wife, gets cursed for that, goes to an island, loses half his goddamn crew, continues on, eventually does get the fleece, but gets banned from the town that he wants to bring it back to and live in, because it's his home fucking city, ends up eventually just dying on an island somewhere or getting murdered by one of the ex-wives, if I remember correctly.
Jeez.
So, like, he is both a dick and constantly dicked over. And, like, I've done a really bad summary of it, but tragedy all over the place. Very Greek style.
Yeah, this book also parallels a lot of the Odyssey and, like, Odysseus as well. I think those are, like, the two big ones that are drawn on in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also very tragic. Odysseus did not have a good time. He should have faked being mad on that beach a lot harder.
Yeah, we get some fun stuff in here. This is where we get the Hydra.
We also meet these... One moment.
If you're meaning who I think you're meaning...
These things. How do you say that?
The Lystragonian giant?
Yeah, those things. They fight them at dodgeball, and Annabeth calls them Canadians, and I remember being offended by that.
Me too. And we also get Scylla and Charybdis. I'm probably not pronouncing those right.
Yeah, I think you got him.
And we also have Circe, and we have Polyphemus. Yes,
And
those
Tantalus.
are like I think the major monsters we see in this book.
I know Tantalus isn't a monster, but I consider him a monster.
Oh, yeah, he fucking is. Tantalus is one of the biggest assholes in Greek mythology.
He's a camp counselor.
I know.
He was fucking awful. Yeah, he replaces Chiron in this book, which is very sad. Chiron come back. I mean, he comes back and it's fine. But I totally forgot he was in the book. I was like, what? He's not till a later. No, he's in this book.
No, I like Tantalus's portrayal, actually. I thought it was super fucking funny. Him used for comic relief is just great.
It's pretty fun. And he I love his last scene where he's like, I can finally grab stuff, and then he just disappears as he's sent back to the underworld. Yes, this book is fun. We get to see Percy's sailing prowess.
Yeah.
Which is very fun because we didn't see him in the ocean too much in the first book. So in this one, we finally get to see him actually at sea and how comfortable he is at it. And he's just like, wow, I just know how ships work for some reason.
Hooray!
Oh, we also get the sirens in these books.
Yeah, I was about to say, we missed one of the big myths here.
Sirens are very fun. I think they work pretty well how they're done here. Just especially as because it's Annabeth who is lured by them, and so we get to see a little bit into her mind.
Yeah,
because she's a character that we still don't know too much about at this point. So it's nice to kind of see into her head and the things that she cares about as a 13-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
And as Percy's getting to know her better.
Yeah. I like how, Annabeth has a bias against Cyclopses, which is justified. She was attacked by them as a child, right? And so she's not the biggest fan of Tyson. And that gets in between her and Percy's friendship at the very beginning, but she works through it and realizes that Tyson isn't this evil monster.
Yeah, it's good. We love characters being allowed to grow. And also have their her fear of Cyclops is extremely justified.
Yeah.
And we do meet Polyphemus, who is a Cyclops and fucking sucks.
Yeah.
But then you also get Tyson. So I think he did a good job balancing that where yeah, some of them suck, but some of them are great. Because Tyson's a sweetheart. We love Tyson.
Yeah.
We also get Grover in a wedding dress, which is iconic.
We also meet Cece.
Cece. Percy gets turned into a guinea pig. How's that for a modern adaptation, Jersey?
Guinea pig?
Cece's Spa and Resort. where a beautiful woman gives ladies beautiful makeovers and turns men into guinea pigs.
Pretty sure this is...
Hermes multivitamins turn them back into men.
Why? I know I read this one, but a lot of the things you're saying are not ringing a single damn bell. I must have not read well enough.
Yeah, because in the original myth, Cersei turned men into, like, actual pigs.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then ate them. In this one, she turns them into guinea pigs and then sells them to pets as pets.
Depending on where in the world you sell them, they could also be eaten. But anyways.
Yeah, she doesn't care. They're men. Men are awful.
I'm not coming up with any arguments for that.
Blackbeard's there.
Blackbeard is there, which I totally forgot about on my reread, and then I got there and I was like, oh, I forgot Blackbeard's in this.
For some reason.
He's just there.
I think, doesn't Annabeth call him a demigod?
I think so. I think he was. Hold on, let me see if I can find that part.
Edward Teach, a demigod? I mean, I guess.
I can't remember who's their godly parent.
I'm gonna try and find, but no, literally one of my favorite running gags in these books is just like, oh, this famous person was a demigod.
I think I want to say Albert Einstein is also a demigod.
Probably.
I feel like that was mentioned at one point.
I mean, that's like a classic bit in any like urban fantasy type deal. A classic bit. I love that shit.
Yeah, it's very funny.
It is a good bit, and I do think they use it pretty well in this series. I definitely think, like...
Son of Ares.
Pardon?
Edward Teach, son of Ares.
I guess. Yeah.
That fits.
It fits. It fits. I find, like, that trope specifically is starting to become overdone, but it definitely adds some legitimacy to the world building, right? This isn't a microcosm event that's just happening in these teenagers' lives. There have been demigods and shit running around since forever, and we can trace that back, right?
Yeah, like I remember, and like, I don't remember which book it's mentioned in, but like the Sun King of France, Louis the 14th, I think is said to be like a son of Apollo. So like, and it's just like little random people throughout history. And it's like, these are like the famous ones, and you get the sense that there are more besides those famous ones, but it's just like kind of fun to be like, oh, and this famous person was a son of this person, and this famous person was the daughter of this person, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And they mention things like, I'm sorry?
I was just gonna say, like, I don't think it's overused in the books. I think it's like well done enough, just kind of like sprinkled in.
Yeah. Because they're not just name dropping. Like, they mention at one point that some of them get to, like, the White House, but they don't name drop which ones ended up in the White House.
Which is probably really smart, given, like, the amount of Americana that's actually in these books. And there's a lot of Americana in these books. As a Canadian reading it, I was lost sometimes with just, like, national monuments and shit. I was like, this is unimportant to me.
The Last Olympian is really funny because it takes place like almost entirely in Manhattan. So there's a part where Percy's like, okay, you guys go to this bridge and you guys go to this bridge and you guys go to this tunnel. And I'm just like, where? Hold on, what? How many bridges are there into Manhattan?
Does this book come with a map? Like, I'm really great for fantasy worlds coming with maps. I love that shit. But do you guys come with, like, the subway routes to Manhattan for this book? I need them.
Actually, The Last Olympian does have a map of Manhattan.
Oh my fucking god.
It's probably not up to date to now. It's probably not up to date to now, but...
No, but it's not like a detailed map. It's just, like, functional. But yeah, no, there is a lot of I think it's very funny in the Titan's Curse specifically, in terms of Bianca. There's a part where they're trying to figure out what happened to Bianca and like what her deal is, and they're like, okay, who's the current president? And the book just says she names the current president, and they're like, okay, but who's the last president? And then it like actually name drops an actual president. I don't remember which one. I want to say Roosevelt, but I could be wrong. But yeah, it's just like the way that like some of the more modern stuff is handled. Well, they won't mention like current day politicians, but they'll mention like past politicians. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Which I think is an attempt to like not age the books.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how well it works.
Like, some things will change. Like, technology obviously always changes, but...
There's a fucking part in... I don't know if it's in the first book or the second book, where Percy name drops, like a Hilary Duff song or something, and I'm like, do people even remember that song exists anymore? That's gonna date the book.
Yeah, the trouble with urban fantasy. Definitely the trouble with urban fantasy right there.
Yeah. I think it's a lot more of an issue in his later books. But I think, like, overall in the Percy Jackson books, there's a few that make it feel kind of dated, but overall they do a pretty good job of feeling kind of timeless. Just like a little bit.
I'm trying to remember the plot to book 2 now, and I'm having trouble. Somebody exposit on me.
So someone poisons the tree that protects the camp. So they need to go find the golden fleece.
Which coincidentally Grover has already found, because Grover was kidnapped by
Polyphemus.
Him.
And has made an empathy link with Percy.
That never comes up again.
It comes up a lot, actually. Having just finished the books, like, Percy mentions it constantly.
Okay, it never comes up after the first series.
That is probably true.
When Percy is missing, and this would actually be helpful.
To be fair, it is shown to have some limits. Like, at the beginning of The Last Olympian, Grover is missing and Percy can't, like, get in contact with him. And then you find out it's because he's been asleep for 2 months because of Morpheus. But, like, I don't know. It seems like something that should... I feel like there's a lot of stuff that he just, like, removed from Heroes of Olympus because it wouldn't work.
Mm-hmm. When you start to add too many powers to your character so that they can solve all your problems too quickly.
Yeah, and, like, some of them make sense. Like, we haven't gotten to The Last Olympian yet, but in The Last Olympian, Percy gains, like, invulnerability, a la Achilles. And then in The Son of Neptune, which is the second book in the Heroes of Olympus series, Percy has that removed because having one of your main characters be invulnerable for, like, 4 books is probably not super helpful.
Yeah.
A little overpowered.
So, yeah, they need to get the Golden Fleece. Clarice is given the quest, not Percy and Annabeth. Percy, Annabeth, and Tyson sneak out because they don't think she can do it. Or they think they can do it better.
I also think Percy's just concerned about Grover and doesn't think Clarice would be able to help him, which she probably wouldn't, let's be fair.
Grover wouldn't be a priority to her.
No.
So yeah, they go off on another semi-road trip, this time without the camp's backing.
Yeah. This is where they run into the Princess Andromeda cruise ship for the first time, I think.
Where we meet Luke again, who has his army of, like, monsters, but also some demigods who aren't too happy with their parents, which is reasonable.
Yeah. But yeah, you get to, like, see the beginning of Luke's army growing, like, almost immediately, which I think is well done. But Luke is also looking for the fleece because he wants it to help, like, speed up Kronos' recovery process. Because, you know, it can heal anything, including a god or a titan that got chopped into a million pieces, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like we should have chopped them up finer.
Or, like, hid them in different places, not just all in the same place.
Yeah. Yeah, then they travel through the Sea of Monsters, sometimes with Clarice, sometimes without her. Tyson has a fake-out death, but is fine, because a Cyclops and is immune to fire damage. And then they get to Polyphemus, they fight him, they get the fleece, they let Clarice take it home.
They sneak back into camp.
They sneak back in?
Well, they kind of walk in and everybody ignores them getting back because if they acknowledge them returning to camp, they have to acknowledge the fact that they left the camp without permission.
That is true. Oh, we also get introduced to the party ponies.
Oh, yeah.
In this book. I forgot about that. We love the party ponies.
You want to tell us who the party ponies are?
The party ponies are they're basically when Rick was adapting the centaurs into modern day, he just made them frat bros, which if you think about it, not a bad comparison.
Continue.
Am I wrong though?
If you're sanitizing, I guess.
Mm-hmm. The party ponies save Percy and Annabeth, and I think Tyson and Grover, from Luke.
Yeah.
And isn't this also when Percy gets Blackjack?
Yes, Percy frees Blackjack from Princess Andromeda.
Well, we have a continuality error because I think Blackjack is said to be a girl at this point, and then in all of the rest of the books, he is a boy.
Yeah, when he's introduced, Percy's like, oh, a black mare. And then in the rest of the books, he's like a stallion. And you're like, okay.
Mm-hmm. Who calls Percy boss and asks for donuts.
Yeah. It's okay. We love Blackjack, though.
Blackjack's great.
I don't remember 90% of these things, everyone. I remember some of those main story beats, but otherwise I'm blacking out.
Yeah. We jumped over quite a few of them. And then at the very end of the book, when they get back to camp, they put the fleece on the tree, and Talia comes back to life.
And now we have a son of Poseidon and a daughter of Zeus. Oh my.
And yeah, that's the Sea of Monsters. Any final thoughts on the Sea of Monsters before we move on?
This is the last book I read, and I clearly didn't read it well enough because I don't remember most of that, so I'm going to be no help except for actual Greek mythology exposition from here on out.
I remember exactly the party ponies and Talia and the Cyclops, whose name I still can't remember, even though we've talked about it. Tyson.
Miss?
The good Cyclops or the bad Cyclops?
The good Cyclops.
Tyson,
yeah. That's it. Book 3, Talia is in the start.
No.
That's it. No? Okay.
Okay, so the third book, we're on to The Titan's Curse.
I just wanted to make one more point on the Sea of Monsters before we continue.
Go for it.
Because I think it's really cool the way that Rick does the prophecies. Because in Clarice's prophecy, it says, and fail without friends to fly home alone. Well, if she hadn't run into Percy and Annabeth and them, she would have failed at her quest. But because of that line in it, none of her friends wanted to go on the quest with her.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think one of my favorite things about prophecy in like Greek myths and like Greek tragedies especially is like people always think they know what they mean and do their best to like avoid them or like get around them, and they always end up just like walking smack right into what is going to happen as a result. It's fantastic, and Rick does that really well.
Yeah.
In the Percy Jackson books, where everyone's just like, oh, don't do this thing, and then they don't do it, and then it ends up coming true anyway.
Yeah, that's been a trope in human culture for nigh on 3,000 years. We really can't let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Because
it's good.
It's good. We love it's good literary tradition. I'm all for it. I do it myself sometimes. But like, holy shit, humanity, can we come up with a few new tropes once in a while? God damn.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, prophecy is very good. But Titan's Curse. Titan's Curse is always my favorite book because we get to meet so many of my favorite characters in this book. I mean, technically Talia has been mentioned in the first book and is like technically introduced in the second book, but we don't really get to know her until the third book, and she's absolutely one of my favorites. We also meet Nico and Bianca in this book. Zoe is also great. We get to meet Artemis and her hunters, who are also great. We get to meet Apollo, who's great. Are you sensing a theme yet? We also get to meet Rachel for the first time, who I love.
Rachel Dare.
Rachel Elizabeth Dare.
Her initials spell red, and she's a redhead.
It's very creative.
I can't tell if that's Kino world building or absolute garbage.
He's such a good character, though. But yes, so this book is an outlier in that it's the only book that doesn't take place in the summer. It starts in like December when Percy and Annabeth and Talia go on like a rescue mission to pick up a couple of demigods that have been found by Grover at a school in Maine. They show up. They meet. We are introduced to Bianca and Nico D'Angelo. They're being watched by a manticore who they try to fight. He's also working for Kronos. Unfortunately, they can't fight him. Things go really bad. Artemis and her hunters show up, but the manticore takes Annabeth and vanishes. Annabeth is missing. But yeah, then we get to meet Artemis. We get to meet Zoe Nightshade, who is the head of the hunters. And we're introduced to like Artemis and her hunters, who are a band of like not even teen girls, who just wander around in the wilderness hunting monsters.
Artemis is like appears as like a 7-year-old girl or something.
I think she's like 12. No.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking younger.
Oh my god.
She appears as a child because like she is the goddess of maidens before maidens are tempted by men. Or something along those lines.
Oh my god.
And this is I think kind of the first time that Percy's introduced to the idea that the gods can appear like whatever age they want as well as kind of whatever form they want.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all don't... That really fucks me up, actually.
Oh?
Yeah, just because I know Artemis's myths.
Yeah, she's also the goddess of, like, childbirth, isn't she?
Midwifery, yeah, because she aids her mother in delivering her twin brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm talking more about all the different myths where guys go to spy on Artemis and her maidens in the pool. And that just really fucks me up if we made them, all preteens in the series. But anyways.
Well, not all preteens. Some of them are teenagers. But I mean, I think that kind of like adds to the idea of how fucked up it is.
Yeah. Still, just like weird in the brain pan, that would be the choice that was made there. Anyways.
Yeah. But yes, so Artemis basically realizes that she needs to go hunt down a very dangerous monster, tells her hunters to go to Camp Half-Blood with Percy and the others, and vanishes. So everyone goes to camp. People have bad dreams, because dreams as visions are very common in these books. We haven't talked about that at all yet either. And basically discover that Artemis has gone missing. So Zoe Nightshade, who is, again, the head of the hunters, basically takes a quest to go look for her and rescue her. And Percy is not invited, but he tags along anyway because he wants to save Annabeth, who's also missing. In terms of like myths that this one draws on, I'm trying to think. I read the last 3 books all very close together, so my memory on them is not working well, but we have Atlas, and like holding up the sky is the big one. That's the Titan's curse that the book is named for.
Which Titan?
What else
Yeah, all of them got cursed, kind of. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, in this case, it's specifically Atlas's curse of holding up the sky. What else? We have the lion.
The Nemean lion?
Yes. That one is a big one. We also have a lot of Hercules in this one. because we find out that Zoe is the lost, what are they called? The Hesperides?
Hesperides, really?
Hesperides, yeah.
Okay.
She's a lost Hesperides, daughter of Atlas, who guard the golden apples. And so she has like a history with Hercules. But because she like betrayed her family, she was written out of the myths. That's like the story in the books. I'm assuming that's not from any actual Greek myths, because, you know.
Nope.
Yeah. I think, doesn't she give, like, Percy has, like, a dream of her giving him his sword, and then realizes that it was her giving it to Hercules?
Yes.
And
you find out that's where his sword came from as well.
And that's why she gets upset, like, at the sight of his sword at one point.
Yeah. I mean, she just doesn't like being around men in general, because she's a hunter of Artemis.
And Hercules kind of, like, betrayed her.
Yeah.
Hercules was a dick.
Yeah. That is reflected in these books.
I mean, okay. Hercules' myth is very interestingly told in the various iterations of it. He was shit on really hard, but he was also a dick. And this is a common theme in male heroes. And it's hard to tell which came first, the dicking or the getting dicked on, which caused the spiral of events. But there was definitely a spiral with Hercules.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I'm trying to remember what other big monsters they fought in here. They also... The only other one that comes to mind is the one that kills Bianca. Spoiler alert. This book came out in like 2010. No. Earlier. 2008. But spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
I don't think it's like an actual Greek myth monster. It's just like a giant robot made out of junk.
Talos.
Talos?
Talos.
Yes, it is a defective Talos.
Talos is a myth in Greek.
Okay.
Yep.
I wasn't sure.
Giant metal man, Jason, if I remember correctly, fights the original Talos.
And he's got like a weak point in his ankle or his heel.
It's usually the bottom of the foot, actually, depending on the mythology, and so you kind of got to get stepped on.
Which is exactly what happens to Bianca.
Yeah. Greek myths, everybody.
Bianca.
It's like there's a maintenance hole on his foot, and she climbs into it.
Yeah. And then dies. And then we find out that at the end of the book, we find out that her and her brother are children of Hades.
Yeah.
So now we have all three of the brothers have children in the game.
I literally, I knew that was coming from the first couple scenes of the original book. It's like, all right, this is clearly a son of Poseidon. We're going to get sons of all of the major three. And then when we went to Camp Haplin, it's like, oh, sons of the major three are not allowed. I was like, bullshit, book. You are lying to me.
To be fair, though, we also find out that Nico and Bianca were born... So in the book, the reason that, they're not allowed is because... Hades, Zeus, and Poseidon made a pact to not have any children after their children caused World War II.
Yeah.
But we find out that Nico and Bianca were born before World War II and were taken to the... after... We don't find this out until, the last book, but after their mother was killed by Zeus, Hades takes them to the Lotus Hotel and Casino, where they spent, 70 years.
Yeah.
Just not aging.
Yay, time shenanigans. I wonder if there'll be any more. Oh, wait, the Titan of Time exists.
Surprisingly, there actually aren't that many in the original books. And it's just then when we get to Hazel again. It's always the children of Hades / Pluto, I guess, in her case.
It's interesting with, Bianca, because they had little bits that led up to us realizing they were children of Hades, when they're fighting the skeletons, and she is the only one that can kill the skeletons and they stay dead. When anybody else tries to kill them, they just pop back up.
Yeah. So there's others too, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. But there's just little ones where you get to see it. And like Percy doesn't actually realize until the end of the book when he tells Nico that his sister is dead, and he and then they get attacked by skeletons, and then Nico opens like the earth and sends the skeletons into the underworld.
Yeah, he takes
And
out a
then
bunch of the
vanishes.
skeletons.
Yeah, and then Percy's like, "Oh, okay, I understand now." Yes, what else happens in this book? We're introduced to Annabeth's father and stepmother.
And half-brothers, right?
And half-brothers. I think, yeah, 2 half-brothers. They're, like, barely there. Her father's the most important one.
Yeah.
He's, like, a military history professor.
Oh my god, that's so funny. Oh my god, that's so funny. Athena goes down and bangs a military history professor. Oh
they
my
don't
God.
have sex.
I know, but like, it's just so funny.
Athena's children are born from her mind.
I know.
Yeah,
Athena is one of the potential virgin goddesses, depending on which mythos you go through. Oh. But like, that's still just so funny.
It is funny. But yes, he shows up at the end during the final battle and helps and like shoots some monsters with his fancy like warplane.
So it said that Annabeth left weapons at their place at one point, and he turns the bronze weapons she left into bullets.
Alright, I'm going to ignore how bad bronze would be at being an actual bullet, but anyways.
But it's magic bronze.
It's celestial bronze. Oh, I just found the part where Dionysus kills the manticore and sends all those people mad. But yes, and then we also get the home of the Titans, Mount Orthrus, I believe. And we're introduced to Atlas, who... This book is very fun because we get the whole passing of the sky shenanigans. Luke takes the sky from Atlas so that Annabeth will take it from Luke, so that Artemis will take it from Annabeth. And then Artemis is stuck holding up the sky. And then Percy takes the sky from Artemis, who tricks Atlas into taking the sky back.
Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, Percy and Annabeth have matching gray streaks in their hair.
Which are never mentioned again.
Why am I sensing a theme with that? Let's make our characters quirky and unique, but God, I don't want to have to write that bit again.
Yeah. We also have the introduction of the Ophiuchorus.
Bessie!
The what?
It's a half fish, half cow.
Oh, one of those. Okay, good.
I might be pronouncing it wrong. Ophiuchorus.
I know what creature now. I know what creature. Yeah, I know what creature. Okay, good. I'm glad he touched on some of the stranger Greek myths.
Yeah, and so I literally just Googled it and pulled up the wiki page for it. The Ophiuchorus was an ancient monster that could bring down the gods if it was slain and its entrails burned. So you find out that this is the monster that Artemis was hunting, because its existence means that the gods could be brought down, which is bad news for the gods. But Percy gets attached to it, so he begs them to save it.
It works. Like, he manages to convince them to keep it on Mount Olympus as like a pet.
I just read like the last battle scene earlier today, and it's like at one point Percy's like, the Ophiuchorus better be quiet or else Kronos will notice, and then he just doesn't like become relevant in the fight at all. Like the last time that Bessie is mentioned is when Percy is like, I hope that it's quiet.
And then it was. Hooray.
And then it was. But yes, and then Zoe is killed by Atlas and turned into a constellation. Trying to remember what else happens in this. Lots of death in this book. It's a very sad book. But we also meet Rachel in one of the best scenes.
I feel like I should mention the fact that we met Apollo when he was driving them back to camp in the sun chariot. And he let Talia drive because as the god of the sun, he can tell that her 16th birthday was right around the corner, like it was the next day or something.
It was like at the end of the week.
At the end of the week, yeah. She was almost 16, so yeah, she can totally drive.
Also the iconic exchange of lines where Apollo shows up and Talia's like, oh no, he's hot. And Percy's like, yeah, he's the sun god. And she's like, that's not what I mean.
And then he shows up again and gives Percy a haiku and says that his name is Fred. Like, it's not Apollo, it's Fred.
Apollo's great. I love him.
No, he's not, but anyways.
He's wonderful. Leave him alone.
In the Percy Jackson books.
Yep, like I said, the only cap I can put on right now is Greek mythology nerd. And oh, fuck.
Fair. I mean, to be fair, I don't feel like you can like any of the Greek gods because they've inevitably done some really horrible shit.
Yeah.
But in the Percy Jackson books, he's great. He's just like shows up, is obnoxious, and then leaves.
Artemis tells him not to flirt with her hunters.
And he's like, oh, fine. But yes, and Percy... Yes, I want to talk about the Rachel scene, though, because I think it's really fun. Where they're at the Hoover Dam, and they're being hunted by skeletons. Percy hears someone sneeze behind him and assumes it's a skeleton, so he swipes with the sword, and it goes straight through this, like, mortal girl who's like, do you always attack people when they sneeze? And then he's introduced to the concept of people, of, like, mortals that can see through the mist, which is, like, this thing that, like, obscures people, like, normal people's sight, so that they don't see that the Greek gods and monsters are still around.
Like, it turns a hellhound into, like, a poodle. It turned the golden fleece into a Leatherman's jacket.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
It's very fun. And obviously this is important for later books. But yeah, I'm like, are we missing anything important in this book?
So they're just mortals walking around and be like, that dude's carrying a sword. That's a fucking lion. Oh my god, does that girl have wings? I'm going to ignore all of this.
Yeah, basically.
Same, bruh. I don't want to get admitted to the psych ward. I'm not talking shit about this.
Oh, we also meet Nereus in this book, don't we? Briefly. Yeah, the old man of the sea.
Yes.
And Percy has to, like,
him.
just jumps on his back and holds him down.
Oh.
Because, like, if you can catch him, you get, like, a wish or something.
He'll answer one question.
Ah, yes. And Percy needed a question answered. So he dressed up like a homeless guy.
And then physically assaulted an old man.
Yeah, that turned into I want to say turned into a dolphin.
He turned into a bunch of sea creatures.
Okay.
There was like an orca at one point. He was a seal at one point. There was a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so they really do reference Hercules a lot, because Hercules literally wrestles Nereus to get the answer to where the golden apples are.
Yeah.
Damn.
Which they don't need to know where I think they're I don't remember what question they ask specifically. But they already know where the golden apples are. But yes, that, like, the golden apples are, like, a big part of this. So, like, Hercules is definitely one of the big myths in this book that is drawn from for inspiration.
Golden apples are like the world's first MacGuffins also. But anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also the meeting, or have we gotten to the part where we're going to talk about the meeting on Olympus at the end of it?
I mentioned it very briefly when we were talking about Bessie, but...
Because, like, I remember it because both Athena and Ares want to just kill Percy. Straight up kill him so that he can't become the child of the prophecy, because Talia agrees to join the Hunters of Artemis, so she will never actually reach 16.
Yeah, she, like, makes this agreement, like, the day before her 16th birthday.
Yeah. And so they're like, hey, let's just kill Percy so he never turns 16. And Poseidon is like, no. And Percy's like, no. And Annabeth's like, Mom!
Yeah. But I think that covers the Titan's curse, unless there's anything else anyone would like to say about it.
I think at the very end of it, when Percy finds out that Nico is Hades' son, he decides not to tell anybody about it. He just says that this little kid just ran off.
Yeah.
Basically, because he's claiming the prophecy.
Yeah, because he doesn't want Nico to have to go through any more shit after his sister died.
Yeah.
So that's a big secret that's kind of looming over everyone's head for, like, the next book. And then the Battle of the Labyrinth, book 4, picks up, like, 6 months later at the start of summer. Percy gets attacked by, what are they called? Impusa? I believe. The snake ladies?
Yeah, with...
No. Wait.
Yeah, and Pusa.
There are many snake ladies.
No.
I don't know if they're not snake ladies. They have...
Goat legs?
Yeah,
or metal parts?
They have, like, one goat leg and one metal leg.
And they're dressed
followers
as cheerleaders.
of Hecate?
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So he gets attacked by those in the first chapter and also runs into Rachel Elizabeth Dare. They have some conversations, and then this is the start of the annoying, jealous stuff.
The minor love triangle that is just, like, stuck in there for no reason.
It's like, I try not to let it bother me because I know it could be so much worse, but I'm also just like, it also just didn't have to be there.
Yeah.
But yes, Battle of the Labyrinth draws very heavily on, you could probably guess, the Labyrinth myths.
So,
surprisingly, the Minotaur is not in this book, but we
Yeah.
got Daedalus, and we have the Labyrinth, and we have... I mean, I think that's pretty much the main focus.
So, like, the Minotaur myth and the Labyrinth myth are very interesting things with dear King Minos and what the hell happens with him being, you know, an asshole to Zeus and not sacrificing his prized bull. So Zeus makes the bull fuck his wife and then creates this thing that he has his best constructionist make a labyrinth for, and then sticks his construction guy in there with his son. Poor bastards. And then demands tribute from Athens every year for 7 people to come and feed the Minotaur for some reason, because it's still his son, and we don't know what his weird loyalties are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, the Minotaur was fought in, like, the first book, so the Minotaur doesn't really show up in this book, except, like, kind of in passing, but you have Minos as one of the, like, antagonists of this book, and you also have Daedalus as one of... I'm like, he's not really an antagonist, but he's also not, like, not an antagonist. Mm-hmm. But Percy shows up at camp, finds out that Annabeth and Clarice have been working on a secret project together. The beginning of this book I find is very frustrating, like, as a reader through Percy, because Percy's like, wait, what's going on? And everyone's like, oh, we'll tell you later.
Oh, God, I hate that plot device. I fucking hate that plot device. This boy is literally the hero. Can you all not tell he is the main character at this point?
I mean, he's not the hero, but we'll get to that. But yeah, so he shows, and then you find out that basically the labyrinth exists, and it has almost like a mind of its own and has spread literally across all of America. And that Luke and Kronos' forces have been sending people into the maze to try and find a way to get into Camp Half-Blood. And then, in another one of my least favorite plot devices, Percy and Annabeth literally stumble into the entrance to the labyrinth by accident.
Yep. And time moves differently in there, so they feel like they've only been there for like a couple of minutes. But when they get out, the entire camp is searching for them because it's been hours.
Yeah. Yeah, and then so basically Annabeth finally gets a quest. It's only been like, how long? 8 years? She finally gets a quest to go find Daedalus's workshop, to find Daedalus, to ask him not to help Luke.
But also
this is like my least favorite quest of all of the quests, because I think it's just like the vaguest and makes the least amount of sense. Because they're just looking for Daedalus in hopes that he's still alive, even though they have no reason to believe he should be.
Yeah.
And also Daedalus totally escaped the labyrinth, but anyways.
Yeah, he did, but that comes up. That's explained away in the story.
Yeah.
We're introduced to not Morpheus, Janus in this book.
Yes.
Which I think is like the first time that like a Roman god is kind of introduced.
Mm-hmm.
He's a dick, which is typical of the gods.
Hera shows up and helps them out of that, doesn't she?
Yeah, she sure does, and she's also a dick, but that's also not surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, along the ways they run into. Oh, and this is also the point where Grover's already been kind of important, but this is the part where like Grover's story really comes to fruition, because he's been searching for Pan, who's been missing for like 2,000 years, and he's like positive that he can find him. So Annabeth takes Percy, Grover, and Tyson on a quest through the labyrinth in hopes that she can find Daedalus and Grover can find Pan.
Which is kind of a taboo, because you're only supposed to take 3 people on a quest, not 4 people.
Yeah, again, they break that a lot. We didn't even mention that in the Titan's Curse. The quest is like 5 people in that book. Only 3 of them make it back, but there were...
Which is something that is brought up when Annabeth is like, I need all 3 of these people to come with me. It's got to be the 4 of us that go on this quest.
Yeah. Yeah, so... Again, I think this book is kind of messy in terms of plot, and like I feel like it's very all over the place.
There's a couple random things that are thrown in, like they end up in Alcatraz.
Yeah, where they meet Briares. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
The last of the 100-headed ones.
Oh, interesting. I was wondering if they would be brought up at all, because they're kind of a throwaway myth in Titanomachy, so like, yeah.
He's the only one. The other ones have long since faded from existence.
Yeah. It's really...
Which is something that is canonized in these books and then kind of thrown out the window in the Heroes of Olympus books a little bit.
Yeah. It's really weird because, like, I think Percy challenges him to a rock, paper, scissors tournament, and if Percy wins, he will leave with them. And then
Percy uses gun.
Yeah, he cheats. But if you have 100 hands, you can't lose.
They end up at Alcatraz at one point, which is really random. Where else do they go? They go to like a bunch of different places. This one's very all over the place. They end up at, God, what's that dude's name? This is one of Hercules' labors again. The guy with the horses, the flesh-eating horses.
Oh, yeah. Golden Touch.
Midas.
Thank you.
No.
Because he's not the one with the flesh-eating horses.
No?
He's not. No, that's not.
He comes up in the second... I'm mistaken.
He's not in the series. It's one of his labors is the horses. But I don't remember the dude who like owns or like keeps the horses.
He's got like 3 bodies, doesn't he?
Diomedes?
And Nico's there.
Nico is there. Yes, that's where Nico comes back. Why can't I remember what this dude's name is? Jarian?
Triple J Ranch.
Yeah, Garion.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna call him Garion. The three-bodied, four-winged giant who lived on the island of Erythea. But yes, so Percy and Co show up there, and Garion is going to turn all of them over to Luke and Kronos, but then Percy's like, I'll clean your stables like Hercules did, and if I do, you have to let us go. So then he goes to try and clear the stables out, but then the nymph who's like lives in the river is like, no, stop using my water. And then he's like, okay. And then he discovers that he can just summon water from like fossilized seashells.
Yeah, I think she points him in that direction because she's like, oh, you're just going to agree? Okay, that's nicer than what the last guy did.
Yeah, so she helps him out.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean, but I think like the way Percy's power scaling is done pretty decently in it is that like he has like people to be like, oh, have you tried this? And he's like, oh, I didn't know I could do that.
Yeah.
So that happens, and then Garion is like, I didn't swear to keep my word on the river Styx, haha. And then Percy kills him.
Okay, so
Classic.
they kind of mixed up the myths there for Hercules,
Yeah.
by the way, with Garion.
Oh?
Garion is you're supposed to steal his horses. You're supposed to clean Augus's stables, and the reason that was so weird is because Augus had like the most fucking cattle in existence, and you had to do all of the stables in a single day, whereas you just had to steal Garion's.
Which one were the flesh-eating horses?
Don't know, because I'm pretty sure Garion isn't flesh eating. I'm pretty sure Garion's is just like you're stealing his cattle. I don't remember which one was the flesh eating. Oh, it is the mares of Diomedes. That's the one.
Yeah, because it's the flesh-eating horses. That's why nobody's cleaned the stables in so long, because they will eat you.
That one is also steal the horses, not clean the horses' stables.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the cows are also there. I guess he just wanted to like change it up a little bit.
And I think the cows, isn't he selling the cows for meat? Like, he's butchering them. And these are, like, sacred cows.
They're like Apollo's sacred cows.
Yeah. And Grover gets all offended on behalf of the cows or on the behalf of Apollo. Like, you're sacrificing this sacred cows?
How dare you? Oh, we also get the Sphinx shows up in this book, which is very funny because Annabeth is like, oh, I know what she's going to ask, so I'll answer the riddle. And then she goes to answer the riddle, and the Sphinx starts asking her, like, trivia questions. And she gets, like, pissed off because she's like, these aren't riddles. These are just trivia. Like, how dare you question my intelligence like this?
That's a pretty funny interpretation of the Sphinx, actually.
She's like, everyone already knows the answer, so we stopped asking that riddle a long time ago.
Yep, good.
Nico also summons ghosts using McDonald's Happy Meals.
Yeah, he sure does. And he is being advised by the ghost of King Minos, who is trying to... We find out he's basically that Daedalus escaped death by creating automaton bodies for himself. And Daedalus is trying to... is basically trying to hunt down Daedalus and, like, get his revenge for him in... Revenge, like, in death, basically. Yeah. We'll get more to Daedalus in a bit, I think. I'm trying to remember what other big myths came up in here. We also had... Oh, I should just look at the chapter titles. That should be enough, honestly. We get to meet Hephaestus in this book. And Typhon is introduced as being trapped in one of Hephaestus's forges. That is hard to say. And Percy accidentally sets Typhon free by exploding the volcano, which is Mount St. Helens, I believe.
Oh yay, more Americana.
Yeah.
And that is one of the moments where people realize just how powerful Percy is, because like he literally almost causes a volcano to erupt.
No, he causes a volcano to erupt.
Yeah, he causes the volcano to erupt. He almost releases the monster that's trapped under it.
Yeah. And then we're introduced to Calypso. When Percy washes up on her island and she heals him, like nurses him back to health, and then admits that she's like cursed to like fall in love with men that she can never keep. And then he leaves her.
Doesn't Hephaestus visit him on that island too?
Hephaestus does visit him on that island to basically be like, you need to go back. Or he's like, are you coming back so I can like let people know that you're alive?
And he shows up back at camp as they're like burning his burial shroud because they think he's just gone. They've given up on him coming back.
It's only been like 2 weeks too. And like I feel like demigods have gone missing for longer than that. But yeah, Calypso. I think Calypso's a really, really interesting character. The chapter that she is in is like really fucking sad.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that annoys, I mean, I mentioned her earlier already because she's one of the things that I think Rick undoes in the Heroes of Olympus books in a way that annoys me. But yes, he escapes Calypso's island, goes back to camp, realizes that he knows how to get through the labyrinth. Because one of the things is like no one knows how to get through the labyrinth. Luke is looking for Ariadne's string. But Percy learns that the reason that like Ariadne's string works, but part of the reason is because Ariadne could see through the mist. So he goes and gets Rachel Elizabeth Dare, a mortal who can see through the mist, to be their guide through the maze, and she helps them get through things.
That's some okay world building. That's all right.
Because she can see the right path through it.
Yeah. And then we're introduced to this asshole whose name I don't remember.
Antaeus?
Antaeus?
He's the son of Poseidon and Gaia. Gaia?
Gaia.
And Gaia, yeah.
And Luke is also there.
Yes, Lord Antaeus. I don't know how to pronounce it. Greek names are hard, guys.
Oh, it's Antaeus. Yeah.
Antaeus, okay. Yeah. And this is kind of like the first time that we see Percy like question his father. Because Antaeus has like this like shrine built to Poseidon that's filled with skulls and stuff. And Antaeus is like, I'm Poseidon's favorite son. Ha ha ha. And Percy's like, wait, does my dad actually like this kind of stuff? And you see him kind of like question his father for the first time, which I think is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get to Daedalus after that, and we find out basically like Percy's been having like visions of like Daedalus's life. So you see Daedalus and Icarus being trapped in the labyrinth by King Minos. Then you see like their escape sequence, which ends in Icarus's death. And then you see Daedalus and his nephew Perdix, Perdix suggests this idea of prolonging life by making like lifelike automatons. And Daedalus is like so jealous and prideful that he didn't think of that idea, that he doesn't quite murder him, but doesn't like not murder him.
Plausible deniability?
Basically what happens is like they're standing on the side of a cliff. And so he picks something up and throws it at his nephew and he's like, catch. And his nephew jumps off the cliff yeah.
Because his nephew's showing promise that he'll be smarter.
Nope, I'm pretty sure that's planned manslaughter, actually.
I don't actually know if Perdix is... I don't recognize the name from actual myths, but I don't know.
Either.
Wikipedia says yes. Perdix was a nephew and student of Daedalus in Greek mythology. And he was turned into a bird by Athena. As a way, and then...
Oh, that's why. Yeah, name changes. Okay. Yeah, I recognize this myth now.
Yeah. And we find out that Daedalus basically... Oh, and then years later, Daedalus is at some other king's place, and he solves a riddle that Minos set out in order to try and like hunt him down.
The ant in the shell.
He's befriended the daughters of this king who murder Minos for Daedalus.
Because he's working as their tutor.
Yes.
Yep, all of this tracks, yep.
And then, after he kills Minos, he realizes that Minos is, like, never going to stop hunting him for, like, whatever purpose whatever reason Minos hates him, I don't remember. So he's basically like, well, I guess I just can't die then. So he creates an automaton body for himself.
Yeah. Because Minos is on, like, the council of the three kings that judge the souls when they enter the Underworld. And he knows, he's never going to be able to get a decent afterlife if he dies.
Yeah. And so So in the Percy Jackson version of the myth, he starts creating automaton bodies for himself. And by the time we meet him in the Battle of the Labyrinth, he's on his 5th body and is going by the name Quintus. And he's been cursed by Athena to have the mark of the bird that his nephew was turned into on his neck to like, so because she's like, I'm reminding you that you killed someone. And you're
someone that was like chosen by her or something.
Yeah, he was one of her prospects.
Yeah.
In the Percy Jackson universe, he is her son. Yeah. And then, so they find him, have this conversation. He reveals that he's already given Ariadne's string to Luke. And then I believe one of the Empusa shows back up with Nico, and they're basically just like, aha, we've betrayed you. We're going to kill all of you except this one because Kronos wants him, because they've realized Nico's like a son of... Or I don't think they've realized that yet. I don't think that's till later. But then they escape using the wings. But they assume Daedalus is like lost or on the other side at this point. Then they make their way back to camp, or start to, but before they do, they find their way to Mount Orthrus, and they sneak in, or Percy sneaks in, just in time to watch Kronos come back to life.
In Luke's body.
Which, like, when I was rereading that scene, I was like, literal chills, like... Mm-hmm. Like, just the way it's set up and, like, the tension that's built as you get to this moment when Percy opens the coffin and sees Luke. And you're just like, God damn. I don't even remember how I reacted the first time I read this, but, like, even now, I'm still just like, wow, that's a reveal. Mm-hmm. And then Rachel hits him in the eye with a hairbrush, and they escape back into the labyrinth.
A hairbrush. She's been carrying this hairbrush around since they met up with her and took her into the labyrinth. Like, they mentioned her brushing her hair when she first runs up. So, like, talk about continuality.
It's set up well.
Yeah.
And it's very funny. Oh, and then on their way back to camp, they run into Grover and Tyson again, and they meet Pan, who dies immediately.
Yep. He can finally go to rest. Yeah, peace.
That scene is
New Mexico.
Really sad, though. Like, also, like, still very relevant because like Pan's talking about how he's technically been dead for like 2,000 years, but because the satyrs still believe in him and are still looking for him, he hasn't been able to like go to rest. So he tells Grover like, you need to take my message to the rest of the satyrs and the nature spirits and tell them that it's up to them to preserve the world and that they can't rely on me anymore. And it's just like, it's like this really like poignant thing, I think, that like, again, still relevant today, where I feel like it's really easy to hope that something will come and fix all of our problems for us. But it won't. It's up to us, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, this book is just heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak.
It's when, like, this book is kind of when the series starts to take the darker turns.
I think it starts in the Titan's Curse, but it, like, definitely ramps up in this book.
Yeah.
And then they make it back to camp. They fight Luke's army. Cronus, or not Cronus, sorry. There's so many characters. My brain is stopping to function. Grover uses panic.
Yeah.
Which is, like, proof for a lot of people that he actually, like, spoke with Pan. And then at the very end of the book, Nico shows up. I'm kind of skipping over a bunch of other stuff. But at the very end of the book, it's Percy's birthday party. His dad shows up to give him a present. And then Nico shows up and is like, hey, I have this idea. And it's like the first time that these books have ended on like a serious cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm. And by dad, you mean Poseidon, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's his dad. Who else would I mean?
Poseidon is there, and Paul is there as well. His stepfather is there as well.
I mean, yeah.
And there's the awkward moment where Paul Blowfish looks at Poseidon, and Poseidon calls him Blowfish.
It's very funny. And Poseidon, he's like, oh, Blowfish? No, Blowfish. Oh, that's too bad. I like Blowfish. Like, okay, Poseidon.
And he has blue birthday cake.
Of course, classic. But yes, I think Rachel gets some really fun development in this book. We get to see, like, you know, she's not really like a major character in the Titan's Curse. She's just kind of introduced.
Yeah.
But then in this book, we get to see kind of like her artsy stuff. We get to slowly unlock like her family backstory.
She's rich.
As it were. She's rich. That's her backstory. You see her, she very clearly takes interest in Percy. Annabeth notices and gets jealous, which is annoying, but whatever. But yeah, she's a fun character, and you get to see her like see the world, like truly for the first time, where she's like, you get to see like how brave she is, but also how like frightened she is, and also like to see the world through the eyes of someone who is mortal. Instead, because like most of the characters are like part of the magical world in this series, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting to see things through her eyes as someone who can't really do anything about it.
I did not realize how many characters got added into this book. Holy shit.
Oh, yeah. More and more seem to get added the further we get into it. It's like the more quests Percy goes on, the more people he meets.
I can't tell if I like or dislike that. Because,
I
like,
think it works.
I find it's a common problem I've experienced recently in reading, and this is just a generalist thing, because I obviously have not finished this series, where, oh, I need to explore a new aspect of this, time to include a new character, which is better than, I need to explore a new aspect of this, let's throw another power at my main character. So, like, drawbacks and boons on both sides.
And a lot of the characters that are added, though, like if they're bad, they get defeated or they don't really show up again, so to speak. And then, but with the good characters that end up helping them, like I'm going to say his name wrong. Daedalus. Well, he starts out first being kind of like greedy and everything, like not wanting to die, not wanting to give this up and everything. He does end up like giving Annabeth his laptop so that she can create all these amazing things that he started, he planned. And
which comes in handy in the last book as well.
Yeah, and he does decide, like, I'm gonna die now. Even though I know I'm not gonna get a fair trial, I'm done.
Wait, I shouldn't have skipped this part of the book. This part's important. Yes, Daedalus dies, basically gives up his life because he knows that if he dies, the labyrinth will cease to exist.
Which removes Luke and Cronus's path into camp.
Yeah. But also, we should also talk about Ethan, because Ethan is also kind of an important minor character.
Yes.
Basically, when
another character. Oh, good.
When Percy is in Antaeus's shrine battle place, he has to go through like 3 fights. The first fight is against some random snake lady that he kills right away. The second fight is against a demigod named Ethan Nakamura, who recently joined Luke's forces. Percy spares him and then fights Antaeus and kills Antaeus. And then after that, they flee. Ethan goes with them, and Percy's like, you should come back with us to Camp Half-Blood. And Ethan's like, I can't do that because of whatever reasons. And so he leaves.
Something about his mom, I think.
Yeah. I don't think we find that out until a bit later.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they find Kronos's coffin later, right before he's resurrected, the reason he's resurrected is because Ethan pledges his allegiance to Kronos, which completes the body.
Yeah, he needed a certain amount of followers to complete it.
Yeah. And at that point, you find out that Ethan's mother is Nemesis, the goddess of revenge, and that the reason that he joined Kronos' army is because he felt like children of the minor gods and the minor gods in general just don't get enough respect.
He wasn't wrong.
He's not wrong at all, and that's kind of important for the last book as well, because Ethan does come back in the last book as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the Battle of the Labyrinth. Any other final thoughts?
I kind of want to read them all, but I kind of don't. Continue.
Well, I have them all, so you have the option.
I'm just waiting for the Disney Plus one.
Let's hope it's good. Finally, the last book in the series is The Last Olympian. This one draws heavily on the Trojan War and the myth of Achilles. I think that's the focus. There might be a few other ones that I'm missing, but that's definitely the main one.
Yeah. And Pandora. Pandora's Box.
Pandora's Box also comes into it.
Prometheus.
Yeah.
All that good stuff.
Yes, this book starts off with a bang, literally. So basically it starts with, first of all, one of the most iconic opening lines of a novel ever. The end of the world started when a Pegasus landed on the hood of my car. I remember losing my mind about that when I read this book the first time. But yes, basically it's the end of summer. It's a week before Percy's 16th birthday, which is when the big prophecy is supposed to happen. He still doesn't know what the prophecy is, which is kind of funny.
Everybody keeps referencing it, and the fact that it happens when they're 16, but nobody tells him what it is.
So yeah, it's a week before his 16th birthday. They've been spending all summer doing war prep. Then one of the other campers, Charles Beckendorf, a son of Hephaestus, shows up and is like, it's time. They blow up Luke's cruise ship, which has been an ever-present threat since Sea of Monsters. It's gone now. They blow it up in the first chapter of this book. Mm-hmm. Beckendorf dies. It's very sad and tragic.
Sacrifices himself to save Percy.
Yeah, Percy finally gets to see his father's underwater palace, which is being attacked by Oceanus. And then he goes back to camp, and Chiron's like, I guess it's time you learn about the prophecy. So we finally learn about the Great Prophecy, which has been hanging over our heads since the beginning of the first book. Again, everyone tries to assumes they know what's going to happen. They don't, but yeah, they mourn Beckendorf for dying. We're also informed that there's a spy at the camp, which, considering the like implications of that, you'd think it'd be a more important plot point, but it's kind of like just there.
Yeah, it's mentioned and then not talked about.
Like, it is talked about, but it's just like not brought up as much as you think it should be for something like that.
Yeah, not really worried about.
Yeah. Anyway, then Nico shows up and is like, hey, remember my plan from last summer? Have any thoughts about it? And Percy's like, I don't know. But then he decides to go through with it. So they go to visit Luke's mother. And they find out that she's not doing great. She basically, like, Nico and Percy show up and she's like, oh, Luke, you're home. And then, like, they start, like, asking her questions about Luke and stuff. And they kind of start figuring out a little bit about, like, what happened to her and him and why Luke is the way he is, that kind of stuff. Then they go to the Underworld, where Nico is like, oh, my dad wants to talk to you, by the way. So they go talk to Hades. We're finally introduced to Demeter, who is hiding there because she doesn't want to fight in the war. Mm-hmm. Also, all the gods are fighting Typhon at this point, except for Hades, Persephone, and Demeter, who are hiding in the Underworld.
I think this is the first time in the core books that we meet Persephone too.
It is, yeah.
If you read the like short stories, you would have met her before, but like in the core books.
Yeah, this is the first time she's introduced in the core books.
Yeah.
And then Poseidon is fighting in the ocean. So the rest of the like major Olympian gods are fighting Typhon to try and stop him from getting to Olympus. Mm-hmm. Basically, Hades is like, I don't want you to be the child of the prophecy because I want some respect and I want my children to have some respect. So he locks Percy in a room. Nico breaks him out. And then Percy goes for a little swim in the river Styx to gain invulnerability, a la Achilles.
Who he meets right before he jumps into this river.
Yeah, Achilles shows up and is like, hey, don't do it. And Percy's like, I have to. And Achilles is like, well, I tried.
You need, and like tells him you need a mortal tether or something. Like his ankle was his weak spot. Percy needs to pick one of those as well. But it's more than that. You have to like connect it to something. You have to have a tie to the mortal world. So like Percy thinks of Annabeth.
How sweet. Mm-hmm. And we also find out that this is something that Luke did in order to allow Kronos to like take over his body. Yeah. Then they go to Olympus and basically Hades lets slip that there's something that's going to happen at Olympus and he's not going to do anything about it. So Percy rounds up all the campers. They go to Olympus to try and get Zeus's attention, but Zeus is off fighting Typhon, so he sends Hermes to take a message. And they're just like, oh, we need help. But then Hermes is like, well, we can't do anything. We're a little busy.
He's really rude to Annabeth for reasons Percy doesn't understand.
Yeah. Because she's like, hey, I'm sorry about Luke. And Hermes, like, almost kills her over it.
Yeah.
But then you find out that Athena foresaw that Typhon was probably a distraction. So she gives Annabeth and Percy some advice via Hermes. And then they spend pretty much the next, like, 10 chapters of the book defending Manhattan. like a bunch of little stuff happens in between. Like at one point, Prometheus shows up and gifts Percy the Pandora's box and is like, hey, if you want to surrender, just release hope and we'll know that you've surrendered. It's all cool.
It's not a box. Fun fact, it's a jar.
Yeah. They make like a big deal out of that in the book. It's very funny.
It also keeps showing up. Like, Percy leaves it in one spot, and he'll go somewhere else, and then suddenly it's there.
Yeah, and it's like, it's mentioned that, like, the reason that it shows up like that is because it's supposed to, like, tempt him. So it shows up when he's at, like, his weakest moments. Like, he spots his parents in a car. Basically, Morpheus puts all of Manhattan to sleep. And then, so they're trying to, like, defend it while trying not to kill all the like normal people that are just like in their cars or on the sidewalk or whatever else. So at one point he spots like his parents, his mother and his stepfather in a car, and he like goes over and is like, oh, we have to like get them somewhere safe, and like the jar shows up in the back of the car, and then it shows up again later. We're also introduced to Hestia in this book, who I love. She's great. She's very fun. She's who the book is named for, ironically.
The Last Olympian.
The Last Olympian.
She's both the oldest and the youngest of the siblings.
Yeah. But specifically, she's the one that stays home to keep the flames going.
Yeah. And the most often forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually he gives the Pandora's jar to Hestia as well, because hope is strongest at the hearth or something like that. And she's just like, oh, thank you, you remembered me, haha.
Nobody gives me offers directly.
Yeah.
But as goddess of the hearth, apparently she can take a little bit of everybody else's offerings.
Apparently. Yeah. There's a lot of fights. Things seem like they're going badly, and then someone shows up and saves the day. You know, first it's like the party ponies. No, first it's the hunters, then it's the party ponies, then it's like the Ares cabin. Then like Percy's parents wake up and start helping. Then they pursue Kronos up to Olympus, and they fight him, and Annabeth manages to get through to Luke, who stabs himself in his weak spot and kills Kronos. And yeah, that's kind of where the battle ends. Lots of people die. And then the gods show up. Oh, Percy also convinces his father to help. Oh my god.
Okay.
Echo.
Yeah,
Hello?
sorry, the mic died again.
I can't tell if it's still there or not.
Hello?
Hello?
The mic died again. Yeah, it's starting to overheat because we've been going for so long, so I think it's causing more issues.
Sorry, we'll try and wrap up pretty soon. We're almost done this book.
I was trying to ask, and we realized the mic died because I was trying to ask if we were going to talk about the Draken.
Yes, we can talk about that.
Okay, so the Ares cabin doesn't come out at first. Like Alex mentioned, they come in to help save the day, but that is because while all of the preparation for this battle was going, the Ares cabin felt like they were kind of being ignored and not appreciated.
They went, it was like the Ares cabin and the Apollo cabin went on a mission together. Ares cabin was leading it. And the Apollo cabin captured a flying chariot, and they were basically fighting over who had the rights to have the chariot, because the Ares cabin felt like they should have it because they led the mission, but the Apollo cabin felt like they should have it because they like actually got it in the battle.
Spoils of war.
Yeah, spoils of war. It ended up going to the Apollo cabin. And Clarice, as the head of Ares cabin, was basically pissed, so she's like, we're not fighting. Then there's this character that I've mentioned a couple times, Selena, I don't know how to pronounce her name. Selena Beauregard. She's a daughter of Dr. Becky.
Her boyfriend was Charles Beckendorf, who, as you may recall, died on the ship when it exploded.
Yeah, in the first chapter. So she's been like heartbroken the whole book. She feels like she can't really do anything. And then at one point, Percy is like, "No, you're great. We need you here. I mean, anyone who can befriend Clarice is like important." And then she's like, "Oh, Clarice." So she basically decides to go to Camp Half-Blood and convince Clarice to fight. So then this Draken shows up, and no one is able to fight it.
Nobody was able to kill it except for a child of Ares.
Yeah. But so they're just like, well, we're basically screwed because the Ares cabin isn't here. But then the Ares cabin shows up, led by Clarice, and they start fighting the Draken. But then things aren't going so well, and they realize that it's not Clarice who's leading them. It's someone dressed in Clarice's armor, and the person leading them is actually Silena Beauregard, who dies.
She is sprayed by acid from this Draken.
Yeah, and reveals that she was the spy.
Because she had a crush on Luke and he was kind to her. And then when she wanted to back out, it was too late.
Yeah, because Luke was a dick.
And then Clarice does show up in the flying chariot with her boyfriend Chris, without armor, takes up her spear and slays the Draken.
In like one hit. Like she like Silena dies and she like jumps up and stabs it in the eye and it's gone in an instant.
And she straps its body to the back of the flying chariot and flies across the sky, dragging this thing, gaining the blessing of Ares as she does this.
How very Achilles of her.
Yeah.
How, like, expressly, directly Achilles of her.
Like, that entire thing is part of Troy.
Yeah. I mean, like, they literally compare Manhattan to Troy multiple times. Like, I think when Prometheus shows up, he's just like, I mean, you know how the Trojan War ended, right, Percy? Like, you know this isn't going to go well for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens. Rachel also shows up, like, halfway through the battle because she's been having, like, visions. We haven't even talked about the Oracle at all, but basically at the end of this book, or over the course of this book, you find out that... So in the first book, we're introduced to the Oracle. It's a mummy, a woman who has been mummified.
I think she's kind of described as a hippie, almost.
Yeah.
That was mummified.
Yeah. Which, like... I mean, as a kid, I didn't really question, but, like, you know, throughout the books, it's kind of, like, brought up, like, how strange it is. And then in this book, you find out that the reason she's a mummy is because the last Oracle basically predicted that Nico and Bianca's mother would die.
So, actually, I thought it was that the Oracle gave the prophecy of, like, the child of the eldest god, this prophecy that Percy is claiming. And that is why Zeus tried to kill Hades' children.
Yeah.
Nico and Bianca.
Ended up killing their mother instead. Hades was distraught about it, but because he couldn't get back at Zeus, he decided to curse the Oracle instead so that the mummy couldn't, or the Oracle couldn't, like, leave her body even after she died.
Yeah, she'd never know.
Sorry, what?
So the Oracle, the person who was in would never know rest, and the Oracle could never move on to a different host.
Yeah. And then we find out that Luke's mother, May Castellan, I don't know how to pronounce the name either. Basically, she also was a woman who could see through the sight, and she was basically offered the role to take over the Oracle because the other gods, like Chiron and Hermes and Apollo, didn't know that Hermes had cursed the Oracle. So she tried to take over the role of the Oracle, but because of the curse, it went really wrong.
Mm-hmm. They thought, I think it was mentioned that they thought it might have been because she was a mother and she wasn't, like, a maiden as the Oracles in the past had been.
Yeah.
Because, I think Percy gets a vision of her showing up at camp holding little baby Luke.
Yeah. Yeah, so they think that might be part of it, but because, like, it goes wrong and she's kind of struck with, like, a madness that ends up making her kind of a terrible mother, and that's why Luke ran away from home.
Yeah.
And then Rachel, again, shows up halfway through the battle, because she's been having visions, she tells Percy like things like, "Oh, Percy, you're not the hero." That's why I made that joke earlier. And basically, she finds out that the reason that she's been having these visions and the reason she was like drawn to Percy in the first place is not because she's in love with him like she thought, but because she's supposed to be the Oracle. So she takes over the Oracle from the mummy and becomes the new Oracle.
And ends up living in a cave. Or at least she has a cave at Camp Half-Blood after this that she stays in.
It's been too long since I read the second series, but I know Apollo suggests it, but I don't know if they actually went through with it or not.
They do, because I remember in the second series, when Piper shows up at the camp, her and Annabeth go to visit Rachel in her cave.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, that happens. And then Percy and Annabeth finally kiss, and everyone cheered, literally.
And then they throw them into the river.
And then they throw them into the lake, the canoe lake.
Lake, yeah.
And then they kiss underwater, and it's very cute. And then also Rachel, when she becomes the Oracle, has a new prophecy, which is, surprise, surprise, what the next series will be about.
And like they talk about how, well, the last prophecy was given at like the end of World War II. This might be another couple hundred years or something before this prophecy comes to pass. No,
and
it's a couple of months.
No, it's not even a year.
It's a couple of months. Do we want to like spoil the end of it and how like the prophecy does come to flourish? What happens to Luke?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I already spoiled that anyway.
Well, yeah, it's parts of it. You did say why Ethan was important. Like, you didn't mention why he became important at the very end of it as well.
Right, we should talk about that. Okay, I'm pulling up the prophecy. Mm-hmm. A half-blood of the eldest gods shall reach 16 against all odds and see the world in endless sleep. The hero's soul cursed blade shall reap. A single choice shall end his days, Olympus to preserve or raise.
Mm-hmm. So
and like it's always very fun in these books because at the end they tend to like break down the prophecies and how they work. Yeah. So out of the quote unquote eldest gods, Percy in this case shall reach 16 against all odds. This happens on his 16th birthday. And see the world in endless sleep because Morpheus puts Manhattan to sleep. A hero's soul cursed blade shall reap. This is the fun part because there's like a bunch of blades that could be the cursed one. Like Percy's like, oh, is it my sword Riptide because people have said it's cursed? Or is it Kronos's scythe, which is, made to reap souls?
It is both normal metal, so it can kill mortals, and celestial bronze, so it can kill demigods and monsters.
Yeah. But then you find out that the actual blade in question is the knife that Luke gave to Annabeth when they first met, when he promised that they would be a family, a promise which he broke. That's why it's cursed. So he takes the blade and uses it to kill himself, which kills Kronos in the process. But he dies a hero because of that. A single choice shall end his days. That's Percy's choice to give Luke the blade because he was holding the blade. He took the blade from Annabeth and was going to try and kill Luke, but remembered that Rachel said he wasn't the hero, and so he gave it to Luke instead. And then Olympus to preserve or raise, they ended up preserving it. If he hadn't given the blade to Luke, then they would have lost and Olympus would have been brought to ruin. After all this, the gods show up and they basically hand out boons to everyone who played like a major role in the war. And so to Percy, they're like, we'll grant you one wish. Everyone assumes he's going to ask for immortality and become a god.
Yeah, even like the gods even say, so, and we guess that you'll want to be a god and you can be one of your father's lieutenants or something.
Yeah, but instead, Percy thinks about Luke and he thinks about Ethan, who died earlier in the battle after trying to kill Kronos. And he thinks about Nico and all the other the demigods that have died. And he thinks about poor Hestia, who's always forgotten. And so he's basically instead of asking for immortality, he's like, hey, claim your children.
Like,
and
all of the
basically-
children. Claim them. Yeah.
And he basically has Camp Half-Blood start building cabins for like all the other gods that aren't like the 12 Olympians. And basically says like, your children want to feel welcomed. Fucking do something about it. Be better parents.
That's a pretty solid wish, if I do say so myself.
Yeah. And yeah, it has lasting consequences. Though I still wish he'd explored some of the minor demigods a little bit more in the second series, but instead they're all just children of the major gods again. But yeah, that's Percy Jackson.
I really like this book series, and I'm going to talk really fast just in case the mic cuts out again. I liked the book series. I liked how it developed. It didn't feel very rushed in any ways. Like, Percy's powers grew, his relationships.
It cut out again.
God damn it.
Okay. Yeah, I really liked them. They didn't feel rushed. The power development was good. The characters' relationships were well developed and explored. I didn't like the fact that they changed the myths and everything. Like, Percy being a child of the eldest gods is very loose, because they refer to like Poseidon, Hades, and Zeus as the eldest gods, when in reality they were the younger three of Cronus's children. But yeah.
Well, that does depend on mythos as well. A lot of times it's supposed to be Hades that's the oldest, but again, the myth changes depending on the retelling.
Hades is the oldest of the brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like...
Well, no, again, in some he is the oldest. But it's also stated that, like, Hestia is potentially the oldest, and Dionysus is, again, based on technical myth, a lot older than everyone else. So, like, it's loose.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with Greek myth, is there's so many different versions of every story that, like, you know, it either it fits or it doesn't.
Especially tough when working with mythology that's, 3,000 years old, but yeah.
Yeah. But I think, like, for the most part, he chooses a narrative and, like, sticks with it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I second it. These are definitely some of my favorite books of all time. I've reread them so many times, like I've mentioned. And having just finished my reread of them, I think they really hold up, honestly. Like, as annoying as I find the love triangle, it could be so much worse. And, like, the way it's resolved...
Twilight. Could be Hunger Games.
It could be the Hunger Games. It could be fucking anything Cassandra Clare writes. Like, it could be so much worse. Love triangles and YA are usually bad. This one is pretty minimal, and it's resolved peaceably.
All we can ask for is a peaceful love triangle. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I do think Brooke has an interesting tendency to have, like, women who are not in a relationship with men have, like, a weird specific reason for it. Like, Rachel can't be with a guy because she's the Oracle, so she has to be a maiden. And, like, I feel like there's other examples of this, too, in, like, later books.
With, especially, like, with, when we meet the, Amazons.
Yeah. Or, like, even the hunters, right? But yeah, I don't know. Overall, some of my favorite books of all time, some of my favorite characters of all time. Definitely, like, a comfort series for me. And I reluctantly have hopes for the new adaptation that's coming out. very reluctantly, I'm excited for it. Cautiously.
I'm worried because of Artemis Fowl, but it seems like they don't want to let people down. But like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And, you know, Rick Riordan was working on it, and he really hated the movies and, you know, the alternate universe where those exist.
yeah.
So I am cautiously hopeful for it. Yeah, any final thoughts?
Solid Greek myth fan fiction. Deals with a good family drama. Solid characters. Probably some of the best written, like, teen fiction there is, I'll be honest.
Genuinely, I agree. They're very good. Like, they have some, like, inconsistencies, but, like, they do a good job of striking the balance between humorous and, like, dark and serious. Like I said, like, the scene where Kronos comes back to life is brilliant because it's, like, this really tense, like, emotional reveal, and then it ends with someone throwing a hairbrush at him. Like, great tension breaking moment.
Yeah. And like, I like how there are moments where when we first meet the Minotaur in the very first book, he's in tighty whities. Not very intimidating, right?
Yeah.
But then when Percy fights him again in the very last book, he's in armor. He's got the necklaces of dead campers wrapped around his weapon. He is pretty terrifying, and it takes a lot to kill him at that point.
Yeah.
Which was really well done, in my opinion.
Yeah, it builds up really well. And, like, you know, we get to see the characters have growth and development, and they're well-rounded, and they have flaws that make them interesting characters. And good villains. I love good antagonists. Anyway, Gabe, did you have any final closing thoughts?
No. I was mostly just listening. I didn't really have a lot of thoughts on it. Yeah.
Well, thanks for participating. But I think that wraps up our episode. So thank you everybody for listening in. We are at the InkGuild on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, but our main home is on YouTube and Spotify. You can also connect with us individually through our own social media. You can find that in the description if you're on YouTube. If you're interested in what we do, then you can consider subscribing to our Patreon for as low as $3 for exclusive content. But ultimately, keep an eye out for more podcasts and other creative projects. For a closing segment, quick fire, who's your favorite Greek god? Go.
Dionysus.
We all know what my answer is. I don't need to say it, right?
Say it.
Say it.
Say
I really
it.
like Dionysus.
Did your mic cut out again?
Did you not hear that?
You laughed?
No, I said Dionysus. Ha ha ha.
Okay. Marie-Soleil, I didn't catch yours.
I said Hestia.
I change my mind all the time, but right now I'm going to say Artemis. So, yeah. If you want, feel free to leave your own favorite Greek gods in the comments below. But if you're on YouTube, yeah. But thanks again for listening in, and have a good night.
Au revoir.
Good night.